Good evening, friend. Tonight, we'll wander through the quiet forges and misty battlefields of medieval Europe, where armor and weapons shaped the lives of knights, peasants, and kings. This is a story of craftsmanship, courage, and change, told softly to carry you into dreams. If you're enjoying this journey, give the video a gentle tap to like it, or subscribe to join us for more. I'd love to hear where you're listening from tonight. It always amazes me how many of you are out there, tucked in from different corners of the world, sharing these quiet moments together. Now, find that cozy spot, maybe pull the blanket a little closer. Take a slow, deep breath, and let your shoulders sink into the bed. The world can wait. This time is yours to drift. You blink awake on a straw pallet, the air cool and heavy with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. A faint clanging echoes from a nearby forge, and the distant crow of a rooster stirs the morning. The rough wool of your tunic scratches gently against your skin, and a candle flickers somewhere in the shadows, casting dancing light across stone walls. There's a smell here, leather and iron, oil and ash, the scent of a world built by hand and hammer. You're in medieval England, in the heart of the 11th century, a time when armor and weapons were more than tools. They were the heartbeat of a changing world. You're a young apprentice, learning the secrets of steel under a master blacksmith's watchful eye. The morning mist clings to the village, and somewhere in the distance, church bells ring softly across the countryside. As the world turned quietly through the ages, from the fall of Rome to the rise of great kingdoms, something beautiful was happening in the workshops and forges of medieval Europe. Master craftsmen, their hands blackened by soot and their hearts filled with pride, were creating more than mere objects of war. They were forging the very backbone of civilization itself. Picture, if you will, a feudal village nestled in a valley, where cobblestone streets wind between timber-framed houses. Smoke rises lazily from cottage chimneys, and the sound of hammers on anvils rings out like a gentle heartbeat. Stone castles crown the hillsides, their towers reaching toward cloudy skies, while bustling markets fill with the voices of merchants and the clink of coins. In this world, armor and weapons were not simply tools of conflict. They were symbols of protection, markers of status, and marvels of innovation. A knight's gleaming mail spoke of his oath to protect the innocent. A blacksmith's carefully forged sword told the story of countless hours spent perfecting his craft. Even a peasant's simple spear carried the weight of survival and hope. Tonight, we'll drift through centuries like leaves on a gentle stream, from the clinking chains of early mail to the gleaming plates of a knight's armor, each piece telling a story of skill and time. We'll visit smoky forges where sparks dance like fireflies, walk through castle armories where torchlight catches on polished steel, and stand in quiet fields where the morning mist holds the echoes of ancient battles. You don't need to remember every detail. Let them wash over you like water, carrying you deeper into rest. As we journey together through these distant times, allow your mind to wander freely, following the rhythm of hammer on anvil, the whisper of steel through air, and the gentle crackle of forge fires burning low. The story begins now, in a time when the world was young and full of possibility, when every piece of metal shaped by human hands carried within it the dreams of those who forged it. The fire in the forge glows softly, and you stand, watching sparks dance as the blacksmith links tiny rings of iron, each one no bigger than your thumb. The workshop is warm and dim, filled with the gentle rhythm of hammer on anvil and the quiet hiss of hot metal meeting water. Your master, a weathered man with gentle eyes and hands like leather, looks up from his work and nods toward the glowing coals. "Come closer, young one," he says, his voice soft as the morning mist. "Today, you'll learn the ancient art of making mail, the armor that has protected warriors since your grandfather's grandfather walked this earth." You step closer, feeling the warmth of the forge against your face. The air smells of charcoal and iron, with hints of the oil used to keep the metal from rusting. On the workbench before you lies a growing sheet of chainmail, thousands of tiny rings interlocked like the scales of some great silver fish. Each ring catches the firelight, creating a gentle shimmer that dances across the workshop walls. "This is how it begins," your master whispers, picking up a length of iron wire. "We start with simple metal, no different from the nails that hold our roofs together or the horseshoes that protect our horses' feet. But with patience and skill, we transform it into something that can save a life." He demonstrates, heating the wire until it glows like a tiny sun, then wrapping it around a metal rod to form a spiral. With practiced movements, he cuts the spiral into individual rings, each one perfect and uniform. The sound is rhythmic, almost musical, snip, 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 like a lullaby played on metal strings. In the time of the Anglo-Saxons and the fierce Vikings, he continues, his voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller, warriors would wear these shirts of mail into battle. They called them ring-woven war shirts or battle nets, and they were as precious as gold. A single shirt might take a skilled craftsman 3 months to complete, working from dawn until dusk. You watch as he demonstrates the linking process, opening one ring with pliers, threading it through 4 others, then closing it with a gentle squeeze. The motion is hypnotic, meditative. Open thread, close. Open thread, close. Each ring becomes part of a larger whole, a protective web that grows slowly under his patient hands. Feel the weight of it, he says, draping a section of finished mail over your arm. The metal is surprisingly heavy, each ring contributing to a burden that would settle across a warrior's shoulders like a familiar friend. But it's not just weight, it's security, protection, the promise that steel will turn aside steel. The chainmail clinks softly as you move, creating a sound that would have been as familiar to medieval ears as the ringing of church bells. It's the sound of safety, of preparation, of a craftsman's dedication to protecting those who would face danger. The rings are smooth under your fingers, polished by countless hours of careful work. The beauty of mail, your master explains, lies not in its appearance but in its cleverness. See how it moves. He lifts a section and lets it flow like liquid metal. It bends and flexes with the body, allowing a warrior to move freely while still protecting his vital organs. A solid piece of metal might stop a sword blow, but it would also trap the wearer, making him slow and clumsy. You learn about the different types of rings, some solid, forged from single pieces of metal, others riveted, with tiny overlapping joints that can be opened and closed. The solid rings are stronger, but the riveted ones are easier to repair in the field. A clever armorer would alternate between them, creating patterns that balance strength with practicality. The process of making chainmail is one of infinite patience. Each ring must be perfectly shaped, perfectly sized, and perfectly joined to its neighbors. A single weak link could spell disaster for the warrior who trusted his life to the armorer's skill. There are no shortcuts, no hurried work. Only the steady accumulation of tiny perfections, building toward a masterpiece that might one day stand between life and death. The Vikings, your master continues, his voice growing softer as the fire burns lower, believed that the best mail was made by the dwarfsmiths of legend, forged in the heart of mountains and blessed by the gods themselves. They gave their mail shirts names: Grim's Gift, Wave Dasher, Iron Rain. Each one was a companion, a second skin that a warrior would know as well as his own heartbeat. The flickering firelight casts dancing shadows on the workshop walls, and you can almost see those ancient warriors, their mail gleaming in the light of burning longships. The Anglo-Saxon thanes in their ring-woven shirts, standing shield wall to shield wall against Viking raiders. The Norman knights who would later bring their own traditions of mailcraft to English shores. Your master shows you how to test the mail, checking each link for weakness, ensuring that no ring can be twisted open by the stress of battle. The sound of metal testing metal rings softly through the workshop, a gentle percussion that speaks of thoroughness, of pride in craft, of the sacred trust between armorer and warrior. A good shirt of mail, he says, should fit like a second skin, covering the warrior from neck to knee, with sleeves that protect the arms and a hood that guards the head. It should be neither too tight nor too loose, allowing free movement while providing complete protection. The weight should be distributed evenly, so that even after hours of wear, the warrior feels strong and balanced. The mail you're helping to create will take many more weeks to complete. Ring by ring, link by link, it will grow under your patient hands until it becomes a thing of beauty and purpose. You can already imagine the warrior who will wear it, perhaps a young knight setting out on his first quest, or a seasoned veteran defending his lord's castle. As the evening deepens and the forge fire burns lower, your master sets aside his tools and covers the growing mail with a soft cloth. Tomorrow, he says, we'll continue. But for now, listen to the night sounds, the gentle settling of the house, the whisper of wind through the thatch, the distant call of an owl. These are the sounds that our mail shirts carry with them, the peace they protect, the home they defend. The workshop grows quiet, filled only with the soft tick of cooling metal and the gentle breathing of banked coals. The chainmail lies waiting, patient as stone, ready to resume its slow transformation from simple iron into a warrior's trusted companion. In the growing darkness, you can almost hear the whisper of ancient voices, the craftsmen who came before, passing down their knowledge through generations of steady hands and patient hearts. The rings seem to gleam with their inner light, each one a small promise, a tiny victory over the world's chaos. Together, they form something greater than the sum of their parts, a testament to human ingenuity, to the desire to protect and preserve, to the quiet heroism of those who work in shadow that others might stand in light. As the forge fire dims, the world shifts quietly forward, carrying us deeper into the age of iron and faith, where every ring of mail tells a story of dedication. Every link speaks of the eternal struggle between creation and destruction, between the sword and the shield, between the darkness and the light. Let your mind drift with the gentle rhythm of the cooling forge, the soft settling of metal rings, the whisper of ancient craftsmanship echoing through the centuries. You don't need to hold on to every detail. Let them flow through you like water, carrying you deeper into rest, deeper into the peaceful dreams of a world where protection was forged by hand, one ring at a time. You're walking through a misty field in 1066, the air thick with the scent of wet grass and the distant salt of the sea. The morning fog clings to the ground like a soft blanket, muffling sounds and wrapping the world in quiet mystery. Your footsteps are silent on the damp earth, and somewhere in the distance, you can hear the gentle lowing of cattle and the soft whisper of wind through apple trees. But there's something else in the air today, a tension, a sense of change approaching like distant thunder. The year will be remembered forever, though those living through it cannot yet know the weight of history settling upon their shoulders like morning dew. You find yourself standing at the edge of a Saxon village, watching as warriors prepare for what they do not yet know will be their final battle as masters of England. The men move with quiet purpose, their movements practiced and sure, hands checking weapons and armor with the careful attention of those who understand that their lives depend on such details. "Come," whispers a voice beside you, an old Saxon thane, his beard streaked with silver and his eyes holding the wisdom of many winters. "Let me show you the blade that has protected our people for generations." He draws his sword slowly, reverently, the steel singing softly as it clears the leather scabbard. The blade is beautiful in its simplicity, straight and true, with a subtle fuller running down its center like a river of shadow. The steel gleams with a soft, pearl-like luster, the result of countless hours of careful polishing and the accumulated patina of years. "This is what we call a spada," he says, his voice soft as the morning mist. "The blade of our ancestors, forged in the tradition of the old empire, but made our own through generations of Saxon craft. Feel the balance of it." You take the sword carefully, surprised by how alive it feels in your hands. The grip is wrapped in leather worn smooth by countless palms, and the pommel is weighted perfectly to balance the blade. When you move it through the air, it cuts through the mist with barely a whisper, as if it were made of light rather than steel. "The blade is 3 feet long," the thane continues, "forged from good iron with a core of softer metal to prevent breaking. The edges are of harder steel, welded on by a master smith who knew his craft. See how the fuller reduces the weight without weakening the blade? That groove there, we call it the blood channel, though it serves to make the sword swift and true, not to drain life away. The morning light catches on the sword's surface, revealing the subtle patterns in the steel, the ghost-like lines that speak of the forging process, the way the metal was folded and hammered and folded again, each fold making it stronger, more resilient. The blade has a gentle curve to it, almost imperceptible, that makes it feel eager in your hand, ready to move, ready to protect. But look there, the thane says, pointing toward the other side of the field where different figures are emerging from the mist. The Normans bring their traditions, their ways of war. Through the fog, you see them, Norman knights with their distinctive conical helmets and long kite shields. Their swords are different from the Saxon blade you hold, subtly but importantly changed. The Norman arming sword is shorter, more pointed, designed for a different kind of fighting, a different philosophy of war. A Norman knight approaches, his mail hauberk gleaming with morning dew, his shield bearing the painted device of his lord. He nods respectfully to the Saxon thane. For even in this moment of approaching conflict, there is recognition of shared humanity, shared craft, shared understanding of the warrior's burden. "May I?" the Norman asks, gesturing toward his sword. The Saxon nods, and soon you are holding two blades, one in each hand, feeling the differences that speak of different cultures, different needs, different dreams. The Norman sword is more tapered, its point designed for thrusting as well as cutting. The crossguard is more pronounced, better suited to catching an opponent's blade. The pommel is different too, not just a weight to balance the blade, but a weapon in itself, designed to deliver crushing blows in close combat. "We learned from the Franks," the Norman explains, his voice carrying the accent of his homeland across the narrow sea. "Our swords are made for mounted combat, for the charge of heavy cavalry. The point can punch through mail, and the balance allows for quick recovery after a strike. You can feel the difference as you move the two blades. The Saxons spa the flows like water, designed for the sweeping cuts of infantry combat, for the press of shield wall against shield wall. The Norman blade feels more direct, more focused, a tool designed for the decisive moment of cavalry charge. But it's not just the swords that tell the story of this changing world. The shields too speak of different approaches to the art of war. The Saxon thane shows you his round shield, painted with simple geometric patterns in blue and white. It's made of lime wood, light but strong, with an iron boss in the center that can turn aside the strongest blow. "This shield has protected 3 generations of my family," he says, running his fingers along the painted rim. "My grandfather carried it against the Danes, my father bore it in the wars with the Welsh, and now I hold it against whatever fate brings. It's sized for a man on foot, balanced for the long fight, the patient defense." The Norman shield is different, longer, more tear-shaped, painted with bright colors and heraldic devices. It's designed to protect a mounted warrior, to deflect blows from below, while allowing the knight to strike down from horseback. The shape is elegant, almost like a teardrop frozen in wood and leather. "The kite shield," the Norman explains, protects the entire left side of the body, from shoulder to knee. When we charge, it becomes part of the horse itself, a moving wall that breaks the enemy line. As the morning mist begins to lift, you can see the larger picture forming. 2 armies, 2 cultures, 2 ways of understanding warfare and honor, and the protection of the realm. The Saxon FYRD with their ancient traditions of brotherhood and shared burden. The Norman knights brought with them new ideas of mounted warfare and feudal obligation. The weapons they carry tell stories deeper than steel and leather. The Saxon seeks, a long knife worn at the belt, a tool of daily life as much as a weapon of war. The Norman dagger, more specialized, designed purely for fighting. The Saxon Francisca, a throwing axe inherited from Frankish ancestors. The Norman lance, long and straight, was designed for the devastating charge of heavy cavalry. You watch as both armies prepare their weapons with the same care, the same reverence. Saxon warriors test their spear points and adjust their shield straps. Norman knights check their stirrup leathers and practice their sword cuts. Both sides understand that their lives depend on the quality of their equipment, the skill of their craftsmen, and the dedication of those who forged their protection. The morning air fills with the sounds of preparation. The scrape of whetstones on blade edges, the creak of leather armor, the soft clink of mail rings settling into place. There's a ritual quality to it, a ceremony of readiness that speaks of warrior cultures separated by the narrow sea, but united in their understanding of honor, duty, and the terrible beauty of well-made weapons. Today, the Saxon thane says quietly, the world changes. But the sword endures, whether Saxon or Norman, whether wielded by victor or vanquished. The craft continues, the knowledge passes on, the steel remembers. The Norman knight nods in agreement. "We are all servants of the same iron," he says. "We all learn from the same fire. Whether English or Norman, we are brothers in the brotherhood of the blade." As the sun climbs higher and the mist finally clears, you see the 2 armies arrayed across the field of Hastings. But in this moment, in this quiet space between peace and war, you understand something deeper than the clash of kingdoms. You see the continuity of craft, the way knowledge flows from hand to hand, from master to apprentice, from one generation to the next. The swords gleam in the morning light, Saxon and Norman alike, each one a masterpiece of metalwork, each one carrying within its steel the dreams and skills of the smith who forged it. The shields bear the marks of their makers, the careful attention to balance and strength that means the difference between life and death. As the battlefield grows quiet in this moment before the storm, let your mind drift away from the coming conflict and toward the deeper truth. That craftsmen on both sides of the narrow sea shared the same dedication to their art, the same understanding that a warrior's life depended on the quality of his equipment, the same reverence for the ancient mysteries of iron and fire. Let the gentle sounds of preparation wash over you. The whisper of steel on whetstone, the soft creak of leather, the distant call of larks over the downs. You don't need to hold on to the details of battle and conquest. Instead, let yourself drift with the knowledge that human skill and dedication transcend the boundaries of kingdoms, that the forge fire burns the same whether the smith be Saxon or Norman, that the ancient arts of protection and preservation continue regardless of who holds the crown. As the battlefield grows quiet, let's drift to another time, another place, where the hammer falls steadily on the anvil and the ancient arts continue their patient work of turning base metal into instruments of protection and beauty. You're in a smoky workshop, the bellows sighing as the fire roars, and the whole world seems to pulse with the steady rhythm of creation. The air is thick with the scent of burning charcoal and hot iron, tinged with the earthy smell of clay and the sharp tang of quenching oil. Sparks dance like fireflies in the dim light, and the sound of hammer on anvil rings out with the patience of centuries. Master Aldrich stands at his forge, a man whose hands tell stories of a lifetime spent in communion with fire and steel. His beard is streaked with gray and singed at the edges from years of bending close to the flames. His leather apron bears the scars of countless sparks, and his eyes hold the deep satisfaction of a craftsman who has found his calling in the ancient dance of creation. "Come closer, young apprentice," he says, his voice warm as the coals themselves. "Today you'll learn the deepest secrets of our craft, how we take the bones of the earth and breathe life into them, how we turn simple iron into something that can protect a warrior's heart." The forge fire burns with an intensity that seems almost alive, fed by the gentle wheeze of the bellows that you work with a steady rhythm. The coals glow white-hot at the center, fading to orange and red at the edges, and the heat washes over you in waves that make the air shimmer like water. "Iron," Master Aldrich explains, lifting a bar of raw metal with his tongs, "is not just metal. It's a possibility. It's the promise of protection, the potential for beauty, the raw material from which we shape the tools that build and defend our world." He plunges the iron into the heart of the fire, and you watch as it begins to glow, transforming from dull gray to cherry red to brilliant orange. "The secret," he continues, "lies in understanding the metal's moods. Iron is like a living thing. It has its temperament, its preferences. Too much heat, and it becomes brittle as glass. Too little, and it remains stubborn and unwilling to take shape. But find the perfect temperature, that sweet moment when it glows like a piece of captured sunlight, and it becomes as malleable as clay in a potter's hands." You watch, mesmerized, as he draws the glowing iron from the fire. The metal seems to pulse with inner light, and when he places it on the anvil, you can feel the heat radiating from it like a small sun. The anvil itself is a work of art, a massive block of steel that has served 3 generations of smiths, its surface polished smooth by countless hammer blows, its edges carefully maintained to provide the perfect working surface. The first hammer blow rings out like a bell, and you see the iron begin to flatten and spread under the master's skilled hands. Each strike is precise, purposeful, part of a rhythm that speaks of years of practice. The hammer seems to dance in his grip, rising and falling with the inevitability of breathing, each blow placing the metal exactly where it needs to be. "Feel the vibration," he says, and you place your hand on the anvil's base. Through the metal, you can feel each hammer blow as a gentle tremor, a pulse that speaks of energy being transferred from hammer to iron, from craftsman to creation. The anvil rings with each strike, a deep, musical note that varies with the force and angle of the blow. As the iron cools, its color shifts from bright orange to deep red to black, and Master Aldrich returns it to the fire. "This is the folding," he explains. We heat the iron, fold it over itself, and hammer it flat again. Each fold doubles the layers, creating hundreds, then thousands of layers of metal. This is how we create steel, not just iron, but iron refined, iron improved, iron made strong enough to hold an edge that can cut through mail. The process is hypnotic, meditative. Heat, fold, hammer, repeat. Each cycle adds strength to the growing blade, each fold creating new patterns in the metal that will one day reveal themselves as the subtle grain that makes a sword beautiful as well as deadly. You can see the metal flowing like thick honey under the hammer, spreading and shaping according to the master's will. The carbon, he says, wiping sweat from his brow, comes from the charcoal itself. As the iron heats in the fire, it drinks in the carbon, transforming itself from soft iron into hard steel. Too little carbon, and the blade won't hold an edge. Too much, and it becomes brittle and likely to shatter. The art lies in finding the perfect balance. He shows you how to judge the temperature by the color of the metal, the bright white heat for welding, the orange glow for heavy forging, the red heat for fine work. Each temperature has its purpose, its place in the long process of transformation from raw iron to finished blade. The quenching, he continues, is perhaps the most critical moment. He lifts the roughly shaped blade with his tongs, its surface glowing a deep orange red. We heat it to just the right temperature, then plunge it into oil or water. The sudden cooling locks the steel's structure, making it hard enough to take and hold a razor edge. You hold your breath as he lowers the glowing blade into a trough of oil. The metal hisses and steams, and the workshop fills with the sharp scent of heated oil. The blade emerges black and smoking, transformed from the soft, malleable metal of moments before into something hard as stone. But hardness alone is not enough, Master Aldrich explains. A blade that is too hard will shatter like glass. So we temper it, heat it gently, carefully, watching the colors that play across its surface. He holds the blade over the coals, and you watch as it begins to change color again. First straw yellow, then gold, then blue, then purple. Each color tells us something about the steel's temper, he says. Yellow for a razor, blue for a spring, purple for a tool that must bend without breaking. For a sword, we want the edge hard and the spine flexible, hard enough to cut, flexible enough to survive the shock of battle. The tempering process requires infinite patience and skill. Too much heat, and the blade becomes soft again. Too little, and it remains brittle. The master's eyes never leave the steel as it slowly changes color, and at the perfect moment, he quenches it again in oil, fixing the temper at exactly the right hardness. Now comes the shaping, he says, and you watch as he begins the long process of filing and grinding, slowly revealing the blade's final form. The rough, black bar of steel gradually transforms into something beautiful. A blade with gentle curves and perfect balance, its surface showing the subtle patterns that speak of careful forging. The grinding will turn slowly, driven by a foot pedal, and sparks fly as the blade takes shape. The master's hands are steady and sure, guiding the steel with the confidence of decades of practice. He pauses frequently to check the blade's balance, to ensure that it will feel alive in a warrior's hand. The edge, he says, beginning the final sharpening, must be perfect. Not just sharp, but correctly angled, properly beveled, balanced from point to tang. A blade is only as good as its edge, and an edge is only as good as the steel that holds it. The whetstone whispers against the blade as he sharpens it, a sound like distant rain on leaves. Back and forth, each stroke removing a microscopic amount of metal, each pass bringing the blade closer to its final sharpness. The steel begins to gleam, reflecting the workshop's firelight like a mirror. The handle, he continues, must be as carefully crafted as the blade itself. The tang, that's the part of the blade that extends into the handle, must be perfectly fitted to the grip. The guard must be positioned to protect the hand without interfering with the blade's balance. Even the pommel serves a purpose, providing a counterweight and serving as a weapon in its own right. You watch as he fits the wooden handle, wrapping it with leather strips that have been soaked in oil to make them supple. The guard is a simple cross of steel, filed and polished until it gleams. The pommel is a disc of bronze, heavy enough to balance the blade perfectly. A sword, Master Aldrich says, stepping back to admire his work, is more than the sum of its parts. It's a partnership between smith and warrior, between fire and steel, between the ancient knowledge of metalworking and the immediate need for protection. Each blade carries within it the spirit of its maker, the knowledge of generations, the hopes of those who will trust their lives to its edge. The finished sword gleams in the firelight, beautiful and deadly, a masterpiece of form and function. You can see the subtle patterns in the steel, the way the light plays across its surface, the perfect balance that makes it seem to float in the master's hand. "Remember," he says, his voice soft as cooling coals, "we are not just metal workers. We are guardians of ancient knowledge, keepers of the skills that protect and preserve. Every blade we forge carries within it the power to defend the innocent, to uphold justice, to stand between order and chaos." As the fire burns lower and the workshop grows quiet, you understand that you have witnessed something sacred. The transformation of base metal into something greater, the application of human skill and knowledge to create tools of protection and beauty. The hammer falls silent, and the story moves gently on, carrying with it the rhythm of creation, the patient accumulation of skill, the quiet satisfaction of work well done. Let the gentle sounds of the cooling forge wash over you. The tick of contracting metal, the whisper of dying coals, the soft settling of tools return to their places. You don't need to remember every detail of the forging process. Instead, let yourself drift with the knowledge that human hands can transform the raw materials of the earth into instruments of beauty and purpose, that the ancient arts of metalworking continue their patient work of creation and protection. The hammer falls silent, and the story moves on, carrying us deeper into the world of medieval craftsmanship, where every tool and weapon tells a story of human ingenuity, dedication, and the eternal struggle to create order from chaos. You stand in a quiet forest, the soft twang of a crossbow string humming nearby, followed by the gentle thud of a bolt striking its target. The air is cool and still, filled with the earthy scent of fallen leaves and the subtle fragrance of wild herbs growing in the dappled sunlight. Ancient oaks spread their branches overhead, creating a cathedral of green shadows where shafts of golden light filter through the canopy like benedictions. Brother Marcus, a monk from the nearby abbey, lowers his crossbow with a satisfied nod. His brown robes are practical and well-worn, and his gentle eyes hold the wisdom of a man who has found peace in both prayer and precision. "Come, young friend," he says, his voice soft as the whisper of wind through leaves. "Let me show you the marvel that has changed the very nature of warfare, though some call it the devil's own invention." The crossbow in his hands is a thing of elegant simplicity, a wooden stock topped with a steel prod, its mechanism designed with the precision of a clock and the efficiency of centuries of refinement. The quarrel, or bolt, that he has just fired quivers in the center of his target, a circle of straw bound with rope and marked with charcoal. "This weapon," Brother Marcus explains, running his fingers along the smooth wood of the stock, requires no great strength to master, no years of training to use effectively. A peasant can learn in a day what takes a longbow archer a lifetime to perfect. Some say this makes it dishonorable, that it removes the nobility from combat. But I say it is God's gift to those who would defend their homes and families. He demonstrates the loading process with the patient movements of a teacher who has explained this countless times. The crossbow is spanned, drawn back, using a simple hook attached to his belt. He places his foot in the stirrup at the front of the weapon, hooks the string, and straightens his leg, drawing the bowstring back to the trigger mechanism with a satisfying click. "The beauty of the crossbow," he continues, placing a new quarrel in the groove, "lies in its simplicity and reliability. Once spanned, it can be held ready for minutes or even hours without tiring the user. The bolt flies true and straight, with power enough to pierce mail at 100 paces. It is the great equalizer, the weapon that makes every man a warrior." You watch as he raises the crossbow to his shoulder, taking careful aim at a distant target. There is a moment of perfect stillness, a pause that seems to stretch like a held breath, and then the soft release of the trigger. The bolt flies almost too fast to see, a dark line against the green shadows, and strikes the target with a solid thunk that echoes through the forest. The mechanism, Brother Marcus explains, showing you the intricate bronze trigger system, is based on the same principles used in the great siege engines of antiquity. A small force applied at the right point can release tremendous power. The Romans knew this, and the Chinese have used crossbows for centuries. But it is here, in the forests and fields of Europe, that the weapon has truly found its calling. The crossbow's prod, the bow-like part that provides the power, is made of steel, carefully tempered to provide maximum force while remaining flexible enough to bend without breaking. The string is of twisted sinew, strong enough to withstand the sudden shock of release, yet supple enough to be drawn smoothly. Every component has been refined through generations of use, each improvement making the weapon more reliable, more accurate, more deadly. In the hands of a skilled user, the monk continues, a crossbow can be as precise as a surgeon's knife. I have seen men place bolt after bolt in the same target at distances that would challenge the finest longbow archer. The quarrel flies flat and true, unaffected by wind or weather as much as an arrow might be. He shows you the quarrels themselves, short, thick bolts with heavy iron heads designed to punch through armor. Unlike arrows, which rely on their length and fletching for stability, crossbow bolts are short and heavy, their power coming from the tremendous force of the steel prod rather than the archer's strength. The Church, Brother Marcus says with a gentle smile, has struggled with this weapon. Pope Urban II forbade its use against Christians, calling it too deadly for civilized warfare. But necessity has a way of overruling even papal decrees. When the Saracens threaten the Holy Land, when Vikings raid our coasts, when bandits prey upon pilgrims, then the crossbow becomes not a weapon of war, but a tool of justice. The forest around you seems to hold its breath as he speaks, the ancient trees bearing witness to the slow transformation of warfare. You can almost see the ghost figures of medieval soldiers, learning to use this new weapon, discovering its advantages and limitations, adapting their tactics to account for its unique characteristics. The crossbow requires different skills than the longbow, the monk explains. The archer must learn to judge distance and wind, to account for the drop of his arrow over long flights. But the crossbowman needs only to aim and squeeze the trigger. The weapon does the rest, applying its mechanical advantage to send the bolt flying with devastating force. He demonstrates the spanning process again, this time using a more elaborate mechanism, a windlass that allows even greater force to be applied to the string. The device is ingenious, using pulleys and gears to multiply the user's strength, allowing the crossbow to be spanned with relatively little effort despite its tremendous power. The windlass, he says, allows us to use prods of such power that no man could span them with arm strength alone. These great crossbows can send a bolt through plate armor at close range, or accurately engage targets at distances that would challenge any other handheld weapon. The mechanical precision of the crossbow appeals to the monk's scholarly nature. He explains how the trigger mechanism works, how the seer holds the string under tension until the precise moment of release, how the bolt's flight is guided by the groove cut into the stock. Every aspect of the weapon reflects careful engineering, the application of mechanical principles to the ancient art of warfare. What makes the crossbow truly revolutionary, Brother Marcus continues, is not just its power or accuracy, but its ease of use. A lord can arm his peasants with crossbows and create an effective fighting force in weeks rather than years. The weapon democratizes warfare, making the strength of a man's arm less important than the steadiness of his hand and the clarity of his aim. As afternoon shadows lengthen through the forest, you practice with the crossbow yourself, feeling the satisfying snap of the mechanism, the solid thunk of bolts striking their targets. The weapon feels different from a bow, more like a tool than a weapon, its mechanical nature removing some of the personal skill required, but adding its own satisfactions. The crossbow teaches patience, the monk observes. You cannot loose shaft after shaft as with a longbow. Each shot must be carefully prepared, deliberately aimed, precisely executed. It rewards the thoughtful warrior, the one who takes time to choose his target and make his shot count. The quarrels themselves are works of art, their iron heads forged with the same care as any blade, their wooden shafts perfectly straight and balanced. Some are designed for war, with heavy heads that can punch through armor. Others are made for hunting, with broader heads that create larger wounds. Each serves its purpose, each reflects the crossbow's versatility as both weapon and tool. In the great castle sieges, Brother Marcus says, crossbowmen man the walls alongside knights and men-at-arms. The weapon's ability to be held ready makes it perfect for defensive warfare. A crossbowman can wait patiently for the perfect shot, then loose his bolt with devastating effect. Many a siege has been decided by the skill of the crossbowman on the walls. The forest grows quieter as evening approaches, the sounds of the day giving way to the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant call of evening birds. The crossbow in your hands feels warm and familiar now, its weight and balance no longer strange but comfortable and natural. Some say the crossbow lacks honor. The monk reflects that it allows a common soldier to strike down a noble knight from a distance, without facing him in fair combat. But I say that honor lies not in the weapon but in the cause for which it is used. A crossbow in the hands of a man defending his family, his faith, his homeland, that is as honorable as any knight's lance. As twilight deepens and the forest settles into evening calm, you understand that you have witnessed more than just a demonstration of weapons. You have seen how innovation changes the world, how a simple mechanical improvement can shift the balance of power, how the application of human ingenuity can transform the very nature of conflict. The soft twang of the crossbow string echoes one last time through the trees, followed by the gentle thud of bolt meeting target. The sound seems to hang in the air like a promise, a reminder that human creativity can find new solutions to ancient problems, that the quest for protection and security drives endless innovation. The crossbow, Brother Marcus says as he shoulders his weapon, is more than a tool of war. It is a symbol of human ingenuity, of our ability to apply reason and mechanical knowledge to the challenges we face. It levels the field of battle, gives hope to the common man, and reminds us that strength is not always in the arm, but sometimes in the mind. As the forest grows still, we drift to a new chapter, carrying with us the quiet satisfaction of precision, the gentle twang of released tension, the peaceful knowledge that human skill and mechanical advantage can work together to create tools of remarkable effectiveness and elegant simplicity. Let the sounds of the evening forest wash over you. The whisper of wind through leaves, the distant call of an owl, the soft settling of the crossbow mechanism as it cools in the twilight air. You don't need to remember every detail about quarrels and windlasses. Instead, let yourself drift with the gentle rhythm of aim and release, the patient satisfaction of precision, the quiet forest peace where ancient trees hold the secrets of both war and wisdom. You're in a castle armory, the faint glow of torchlight catching on polished steel and casting dancing shadows across stone walls. The air is cool and still, filled with the faint scent of oil and leather, metal polish, and the subtle mustiness of ancient stones. Rows of armor stand like silent sentinels, each suit telling its own story of evolution, innovation, and the eternal quest to balance protection with mobility. Sir Geoffrey, the castle's master-at-arms, moves among the armor with the reverence of a priest tending his altar. His weathered hands trace the lines of steel with gentle familiarity, and his eyes hold the wisdom of a man who has seen warfare change from the simple brutality of earlier times to the complex art it has become. "Come, young squire," he says, his voice echoing softly in the vaulted chamber. "Tonight you'll learn how armor has grown from simple mail to these marvels of metalwork. Each piece here represents not just protection, but the accumulated wisdom of generations of armorers and warriors." He leads you to the oldest piece in the collection, a hauberk of mail that gleams with the soft luster of well-maintained steel. "This belonged to my grandfather's grandfather," he says, lifting the chainmail with careful hands. "Pure mail, as the Normans wore at Hastings, as the Crusaders carried to the Holy Land. Feel the weight of it, the way it flows like liquid metal." You take the mail shirt in your hands, surprised by its flexibility. It moves like fabric, each ring sliding against its neighbors with a soft whisper of steel on steel. The links are tiny, perfectly formed, each one a small miracle of craftsmanship. When you hold it up to the torchlight, you can see through it in places, the overlapping rings creating patterns of light and shadow. "Mail alone served warriors well for centuries," Sir Geoffrey continues. "It turns aside sword cuts, deflects arrow points, protects against the slash and thrust of hand-to-hand combat. But as weapons grew more powerful, as crossbows became more common, as the art of war evolved, so too must armor evolve." He moves to the next display, a suit that shows the first attempts to reinforce mail with plates of steel. "This is from the early 1200s, he explains. "See how the armorer has added a coat of plates beneath the mail? small rectangles of steel, overlapping like scales, riveted to a leather backing. The mail protects the joints and provides overall coverage, while the plates stop the heavy blows that might otherwise crush ribs or pierce the links. The coat of plates is beautiful in its simplicity. Dozens of small steel rectangles arranged in overlapping rows, each one carefully shaped and fitted. The rivets that hold them are works of art in themselves, their heads polished to mirror brightness. You can see how the armor would move with the wearer, the small plates sliding over each other to allow flexibility while maintaining protection. The transition was gradual, Sir Geoffrey explains, running his fingers along the plate edges. First, just a few plates over the most vital areas, the chest, the back, the shoulders. Then more plates, larger plates, better shaped to follow the curves of the human body. Each generation of armorers learned from the last, improving the fit, refining the protection. He shows you the evolution step by step, mail reinforced with plates, then plates reinforced with mail, then finally plates standing alone. A brigandine from the 13th century, with its hundreds of small plates riveted inside a cloth covering, decorated with brass studs that catch the firelight like stars. A pair of early leg armor, where mail stockings are reinforced with steel strips that protect the shins and knees. The great innovation, he says, moving to a suit of early plate armor, was learning to shape the steel to turn blows aside rather than simply absorb them. See how this breastplate curves? A sword blow doesn't strike it straight on, it glances off, deflected away from the body. The armor becomes not just a shield, but a guide, directing the enemy's weapons away from vital areas. The breastplate gleams in the torchlight, its surface polished to mirror brightness. You can see your reflection in it, distorted by the curves that give the armor its strength. The shaping is beautiful, following the natural lines of the human torso while adding the angular deflection surfaces that turn weapons aside. Each piece must be perfectly fitted, Sir Geoffrey continues, showing you how the armor articulates at the joints. The shoulder pieces, we call them pauldrons, must protect the shoulder joint while allowing the arm to move freely. The elbow pieces, the couters, must bend with the arm. The knee guards, the polions, must flex with the leg. It's like creating a second skin of steel. You watch as he demonstrates how the armor moves, each piece sliding smoothly against its neighbors. The articulation is ingenious, overlapping plates that provide complete protection while allowing natural movement. The leather straps and buckles that hold everything in place are as carefully crafted as the steel itself, designed to distribute the weight evenly across the body. The weight, he says, noting your expression, is not as great as you might think. A full suit of plate armor weighs less than a modern soldier's pack. The secret is in the distribution. The weight is spread across the entire body, carried by the strongest muscles, balanced so that the wearer can move almost as freely as if he wore no armor at all. He helps you into a practice suit, piece by piece, explaining the purpose of each component. The sabatons that protect the feet, articulated to allow walking. The greaves that guard the shins, shaped to turn aside low blows. The cuisses that cover the thighs, attached to the belt with leather points that allow them to move with the leg. The gauntlets, he says, helping you slide your hands into the articulated steel gloves, are perhaps the most complex pieces. The hand has 27 bones, 14 joints in the fingers alone. To create armor that protects all of this while still allowing the fine motor control needed to wield a sword, that is the masterwork of the armorer's art. The gauntlets are marvels of engineering, each finger protected by overlapping plates that bend with your movements. You can still pick up small objects, still manipulate the buckles and straps of the armor. The balance between protection and dexterity is perfect. The helmet, Sir Geoffrey continues, showing you a great bassinet with its pointed snout and perforated visor, protects the most vital area of all. The brain, the eyes, the face, all guard against the enemy's weapons. But it must also allow the wearer to see, to breathe, to hear the commands of his fellows. The design is crucial. Too much protection and the knight becomes blind and deaf. Too little and he becomes vulnerable. You lift the helmet, feeling its weight, examining the careful engineering that went into its creation. The visor pivots on pins, allowing it to be raised for better visibility when not in direct combat. The breathing holes are placed to allow airflow while preventing weapon points from entering. The shape is designed to deflect blows away from the skull. The great suits of the 14th and 15th centuries, Sir Geoffrey says, gesturing to the finest pieces in the collection, represent the pinnacle of the armorer's art. Every line serves a purpose. Every curve has been calculated to provide maximum protection with minimum weight. The steel is perfectly tempered, the joints perfectly articulated, the whole suit balanced like a fine sword. The masterwork suit gleams like captured starlight, its surface decorated with subtle engravings that catch the torchlight. You can see the countless hours of skilled labor that went into its creation, the careful shaping of each plate, the precise fitting of each joint, the patient polishing that brings out the steel's natural beauty. But armor is more than mere protection, Sir Geoffrey reflects. It is a statement of identity, a work of art, a symbol of the knight's oath to protect the innocent and uphold justice. The finest suits are decorated with the owner's heraldry, engraved with prayers and symbols of faith, made beautiful as well as functional. He shows you the subtle decorations, the engraved borders, the raised ridges that strengthen the metal while adding beauty, the careful attention to proportion and line that makes each suit a work of art. Even the most functional pieces show the armorer's pride in his craft, his desire to create something worthy of the warrior who will trust his life to it. The cost, he admits, is enormous. A suit of plate armor costs as much as a village farm, requires months of skilled labor to create. Only the wealthy can afford such protection, and so armor becomes a symbol of status as well as a tool of war. The knight's gleaming steel announces his rank as clearly as any banner. As the torchlight flickers lower and the armory settles into evening quiet, you understand that you have witnessed more than just the evolution of protective equipment. You have seen how human ingenuity responds to challenge, how craftsmen push the boundaries of their art, how the desire for protection drives innovation and beauty in equal measure. The armor stands silent in the dancing shadows, each suit a masterpiece of metalwork, each piece a testament to the skills of long-dead armorers. But more than that, each represents the hopes and fears of the men who wore it, the desire to return home safely, the responsibility to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Armor, Sir Geoffrey says as he extinguishes the last torch, is humanity's attempt to create perfect protection in an imperfect world. It will never succeed completely. There will always be new weapons, new threats, new challenges. But in the trying, in the constant refinement of the art, we create something beautiful, something that lifts the spirit as well as protecting the body. As the armory grows dim and the castle settles into night, let yourself drift with the knowledge that human creativity and skill can transform the brutal necessity of protection into something beautiful, something that speaks to the best of human nature rather than the worst. The gentle creak of leather, the soft whisper of steel on steel, the quiet satisfaction of problems solved and challenges met. These are the sounds of peace, the sounds of craftsmen working to make the world a little safer, a little more beautiful. The armory grows quiet, and the story carries us forward, deeper into the world of medieval craftsmanship, where every piece of steel tells a story of human ingenuity, dedication, and the eternal quest to balance protection with beauty, function with form, the needs of war with the dreams of peace. You're in a village green, watching archers draw their bows in the morning mist. The dew clings to the grass beneath your feet, and the air carries the soft whisper of you wood bending. Around you, a dozen men stand in comfortable silence, their weathered hands gripping tall bows that tower above their heads. The mist swirls gently as they draw back their strings, muscles straining in fluid, practiced motions that speak of years spent mastering this ancient art. Let these details drift through your mind like the morning fog. There's no need to hold them tightly. The longbow you're watching them use is a thing of elegant simplicity, a single piece of yew wood, carefully carved and shaped over months of patient work. The bowyer who crafted it chose his timber with the care of a jeweler selecting precious stones. The outer edge, called the back, comes from the yew's pale sapwood, flexible and strong in tension. The inner belly, darker and denser, is cut from the heartwood, built to compress without breaking. Two woods in one, working together like dancers in perfect harmony. Feel the weight of one of these mighty bows in your imagination. 6 feet of seasoned yew, smooth beneath your palms, surprisingly heavy at nearly 2 pounds. The string, woven from hemp or linen, has been twisted and waxed until it gleams like silk. When you draw it back, If you had the strength these archers have spent years building, you'd feel the wood flex and sing with stored energy, enough to send an arrow whistling through the air with deadly precision. The men around you have practiced this dance since childhood. Their fathers brought them here when they were barely tall enough to hold a bow, starting with shorter staves and lighter draws. Sunday after Sunday, they've stood on this green, loosing arrow after arrow at straw-stuffed targets. The law requires it. Every able-bodied man between 16 and 60 must practice with the bow. But for these archers, it's become something more than duty. It's poetry written in yew and feathers. Watch as one of them knocks an arrow. The shaft is yard-long ash, straight as a priest's prayer, fletched with goose feathers that catch the morning light. The bodkin point gleams wickedly sharp, designed to punch through the finest mail. He draws the string back to his ear with a motion so smooth it seems effortless, though you know the bow's draw weight could be anywhere from 100 to 180 pounds. Enough to break a lesser man's arm. The release is a whisper, barely audible above the morning breeze. The arrow vanishes into the mist, and a moment later comes the solid thunk of point meeting target. The archer doesn't celebrate or even smile, just reaches for another arrow with the calm satisfaction of a craftsman who knows his trade. These bowmen don't yet know it, but they're carrying England's future in their hands. In the decades to come, their sons and grandsons will stand on foreign fields, their longbows singing death songs that will echo through history. At Crécy, at Poitiers, at Agincourt, the flower of French chivalry will fall beneath storms of English arrows, cut down by men who learned their deadly art here on quiet village greens just like this one. The longbow is democracy made manifest in yew and sinew. A peasant with strong arms and steady hands can loose an arrow that will kill a knight in the finest Italian armor. Birth means nothing when the string is drawn back. Wealth cannot turn aside a bodkin point. The longbow makes all men equal in the face of death, and for that reason alone, it will change the world. Feel the morning mist growing thicker now, wrapping around you like a gentle embrace. The archers are putting away their bows, their practice done for the day. The village green grows quiet, save for the soft rustle of grass and the distant lowing of cattle. The sun climbs higher, burning away the mist, and the ordinary world returns. But the longbow remains, waiting. In armories and cottages across England, thousands of these weapons rest in patient silence. They're more than tools now. They're instruments of change, harbingers of a new age where skill can triumph over birth, where the common man can topple kings. Let your mind drift with the dissipating mist. The scene grows soft around the edges, like a half-remembered dream. The archers fade into shadow, their bows becoming whispers of wind through trees. The village green blurs into peaceful green fields that stretch endlessly toward the horizon. You don't need to remember every detail of the longbow's construction or the names of the battles it will win. Let those facts settle gently in the back of your mind like sediment in a still pond. What matters is the feeling, the quiet morning, the whisper of arrows in flight, the patient mastery of men who've turned a simple piece of wood into something that will reshape the medieval world. The morning grows warmer, and somewhere in the distance, church bells begin to toll, calling the faithful to prayer. The sound drifts across the fields like a blessing, and the archers shoulder their bows and walk slowly toward the village, their work done for now. As the arrows fall silent, we drift to another time. The village green fades like morning mist, and the longbow's story merges with the countless other tales of medieval steel and wood that shaped the world. Rest now, knowing that somewhere in the quiet of history, the longbow waits, patient and deadly, ready to write its legend in the chronicles of time. You're in a grand hall, watching a squire polish a knight's gleaming armor. The candlelight flickers across polished steel, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Before you stands a marvel of medieval craftsmanship, a complete suit of plate armor that seems to glow with its own inner light. The squire's cloth moves in gentle circles, bringing each piece to mirror brightness, and with every pass, the metal sings softly, a whispered song of protection and pride. Let the warmth of the candlelit hall embrace you. Feel the peaceful rhythm of the polishing cloth as it works its quiet magic. This is no crude collection of metal plates hammered together by a village blacksmith. This is a masterpiece, a second skin crafted by the finest armorers in all of Europe. Every curve has been calculated, every joint carefully planned, every surface lovingly finished. The armor stands on its wooden frame like a steel sculpture, waiting for its knight to bring it to life. Begin with the helmet, the sallet that will protect the most precious part of a warrior's body. Run your fingers along its smooth surface in your imagination. The steel is cool to the touch, shaped to deflect the deadliest blows while allowing the wearer to see and breathe. The visor can be raised for clear vision during peaceful moments, then lowered to create a wall of steel around the face. Tiny holes, carefully placed, allow air to flow while keeping out arrows and sword points. The neck is guarded by a beaver, articulated plates that move like scales when the knight turns his head. Below that, the gorget encircles the throat, a collar of death that no blade can penetrate. Each piece connects to the next with rivets and leather straps, creating a fortress of steel that moves with the grace of a dancer. Feel the weight of the breastplate as the squire lifts it. Nearly 20 pounds of shaped steel, curved like a barrel to deflect blows away from the heart. The surface is not flat but gently ridged, following the natural lines of the human torso. This isn't just protection, it's art. The metalwork flows like water frozen in time, each hammer blow carefully placed by a master who understood that beauty and function must walk hand in hand. The arms are encased in a symphony of moving parts. The shoulders were pauldrons, great shells of steel that overlap like flower petals. The upper arms nestle within rear braces, while the elbows bend within couters that allow full movement while protecting the vulnerable joints. Vambraces guard the forearms, and the hands disappear into gauntlets that can grip a sword or gentle a horse with equal skill. Watch as the squire demonstrates the armor's mobility. Piece by piece, he shows how each joint articulates, how the plates slide over one another like the scales of some great steel serpent. The knee protection, the polions, pivot smoothly, while the sabatons that guard the feet flex at every step. This armor doesn't restrict movement. It enhances it, turning the human body into something more than flesh and bone. The legs are sheathed in cuisses that protect the thighs, while the shins hide behind greaves that could turn aside a crossbow bolt. Every inch of the knight's body will be covered, every vulnerable spot protected by steel that has been heated, hammered, shaped, and polished to perfection. Let your mind drift to the workshop where this marvel was born. In Milan or Nuremberg, in the smoky forge of a master armorer, this suit began as raw iron ore, dug from the earth and smelted in great furnaces. The smith who crafted it served years as an apprentice, learning the secrets of tempering and shaping that his master's master had passed down through generations. Each piece was forged separately, heated to cherry-red heat, and hammered on anvils worn smooth by countless blows. The curves were shaped over stakes and forms, the surfaces planished to mirror smoothness. The armorer worked by feel as much as sight, knowing from the ring of his hammer against steel whether the metal was ready for the next step. The cost of such armor would beggar a merchant and strain even a lord's purse. A complete suit like this one represents months of work by the finest craftsmen, using the best materials money can buy. The steel alone costs more than a peasant family might see in a lifetime. Add to that the skill of the armorer, the time required for fitting and adjustments, and the decoration that marks this as a piece worthy of nobility, and you have a sum that could buy a small castle. But for the knight who wears it, the armor is beyond price. It is his life, his status, his very identity made manifest in steel. When he dons this second skin, he becomes something more than a mere man. He becomes a living fortress, a knight in the truest sense of the word. The armor transforms its wearer in ways both practical and spiritual. Inside this steel cocoon, a knight can charge into battle knowing that most weapons cannot touch him. Arrows will glance off harmlessly. Sword blows will slide away like water. Even the deadly crossbow bolts that can punch through chainmail will struggle to penetrate plates this thick and well-made. Feel the quiet pride in the squire's movements as he continues his work. Each piece of armor tells a story. The tiny dents that have been hammered out speak of battles fought and won. The scratches polished away whisper of tournaments where honor was earned with lance and sword. The very brightness of the steel proclaims that this knight takes pride in his calling, that he understands the responsibility that comes with such magnificent protection. This armor is not just equipment, it is a statement. It announces to the world that here stands a man of wealth and power, someone who can afford the finest protection and who has earned the right to wear it. In an age where a man's worth is often measured by his ability to fight, this steel skin marks its wearer as a warrior of the highest order. The decoration on the finest pieces tells its own story. Some armor bears the mark of master craftsmen, their signatures worked into the steel itself. Others carry the heraldic symbols of their owners, lions and eagles and roses etched into the metal with acid or raised in relief by skilled hands. The very wealthy might commission armor with religious scenes or classical motifs, turning their protection into a walking gallery of art. But beneath all the beauty and craftsmanship lies a darker truth. This armor exists because the world is dangerous, because men must be prepared to kill or be killed. The knight who wears it has trained from childhood to deal death, to ride down enemies and strike them down without mercy. The steel that protects him also proclaims him a weapon, a tool of war wrapped in the finest metallurgy the age can produce. As the candlelight flickers and dances across the polished surface, you can almost see the armor's future battles reflected in its gleaming curves. Somewhere, perhaps, this very suit will stand in a tournament list, its wearer accepting the cheers of the crowd as he unseats opponent after opponent. Or it might grace a battlefield, its polished surface streaked with mud and blood as its knight fights for king and country. The squire steps back, his work complete for now. The armor stands in silent readiness, every surface gleaming, every joint perfectly aligned. In the morning, it will be strapped piece by piece onto its knight, transforming him from man to warrior. But for now, it waits in the quiet hall, a monument to the armorer's art and the knight's calling. Let the gentle rhythm of the polishing cloth fade from your mind. The candles burn lower, their flames dancing in the steel's reflection. The hall grows quiet, save for the soft crackle of the fire and the distant murmur of the castle settling into night. The armor stands like a silent guardian, watching over the peaceful scene with empty eye slits that have seen too much of war. You don't need to remember every piece of the armor's construction or the names of the masters who forged it. Let those details settle gently in your mind like the soft patina that will one day dim the armor's brilliant shine. What matters is the feeling, the quiet pride in craftsmanship, the weight of responsibility that comes with such protection, the strange beauty of steel shaped by human hands into something that transcends its humble origins. The fire burns lower, and the shadows grow longer. Somewhere in the distance, the castle's night watch calls the hour, their voices echoing off stone walls that have stood for centuries. The armor remains, patient and eternal, ready to serve its night when morning comes. As the hall grows dim, the story moves gently onward. The gleaming steel fades into shadow, and the knight's second skin becomes part of the countless tales of armor and weapons that shaped the medieval world. Rest now, knowing that somewhere in the quiet of history, the finest armor waits, polished and perfect, ready to transform a man into a legend. You're in a training yard, the soft clash of steel ringing in the air. The morning sun filters through the leaves of ancient oak trees, casting dappled shadows across the packed earth where knights and squires practice their deadly dance. The sound of blade meeting blade echoes gently off the stone walls, not harsh or violent, but almost musical, a symphony of steel that speaks of centuries of refinement and skill. Let the peaceful rhythm of the training yard wash over you. Feel the warmth of the sun on your face as you watch these masters at work. Before you, two swordsmen circle each other with the grace of dancers. In the hands of the younger man gleams an arming sword, single-handed and elegant, its blade catching the light like liquid silver. His opponent, a grizzled knight with silver threading his beard, wields a long sword, longer, heavier, designed for two hands and devastating power. They represent two eras of swordcraft, two philosophies of combat, meeting here in this quiet yard where tradition passes from master to student. The arming sword moves like quicksilver in the young man's grip. This is the weapon that dominated battlefields for centuries, the knight's faithful companion that hung at his side through feast and famine, peace and war. 30 inches of perfectly balanced steel, it weighs just over 2 pounds. Light enough for swift cuts, heavy enough to cleave through mail and bone. Feel the balance of such a blade in your imagination. The crossguard rests perfectly in your palm, the grip wrapped in leather that has been shaped by countless hands. The pommel, heavy and rounded, serves as both counterweight and weapon, ready to crush skulls in close combat. This is not just a tool, but an extension of the warrior's will, as much a part of him as his own arm. Watch as the young swordsman demonstrates the arming sword's virtues. His movements are quick and precise, the blade dancing in tight arcs that would be impossible with a heavier weapon. He can thrust with lightning speed, the sharp point seeking gaps in his opponent's guard. He can cut with devastating effect, the blade's sweet spot, that perfect balance point a few inches from the tip, delivering maximum force with minimum effort. The arming sword was born in the age of mail and early plate, when a knight rode to battle with shield on arm and sword in hand. It was designed to work with other weapons, to complement rather than dominate. A knight might begin a fight with lance, switch to sword and shield, then draw his dagger for close work. The arming sword was the versatile middle ground, effective in mounted combat, but deadly on foot. But times change, and weapons must evolve with them. As armor grew thicker and more complete, as the shield became less necessary for protection, swordsmiths began to think differently about their craft. If a knight's body was already protected by steel, why not give up the shield entirely and use both hands to wield a longer, more powerful blade? The long sword in the older knight's hands tells this story of evolution. Nearly 4 feet of steel, it requires both hands to wield properly, but in return offers reach, power, and versatility that no single-handed weapon can match. The blade is longer, the crossguard wider, the grip extended to accommodate both hands. This is not just a bigger arming sword. It's a completely different philosophy of combat made manifest in steel. Feel the weight of the long sword as the master demonstrates its use. 3 pounds of perfectly distributed steel, it moves with surprising grace despite its size. The extended grip allows for tremendous leverage, turning the sword into a lever that can generate crushing force. The longer blade provides reach, keeping enemies at a distance while delivering devastating cuts and thrusts. But the longsword is more than just a cutting weapon. Watch as the master shows its true versatility. The blade can be gripped halfway down, a technique called half-swording, turning it into a short, thrusting weapon perfect for finding gaps in plate armor. The crossguard can become a hook for grappling, the pommel a mace for close combat. In the right hands, a longsword is an entire arsenal wrapped in a single weapon. The two swordsmen pause in their practice, breathing hard but smiling. Their blades have kissed a dozen times, each touch a lesson in timing, distance, and technique. The arming sword's speed has met the longsword's power, creating a dialogue of steel that speaks of centuries of martial evolution. Let your mind drift to the workshops where these blades were born. In the forges of master smiths, apprentices learned the ancient secrets of steel. They discovered that iron alone was too soft, that carbon must be added to create the hardness necessary for a good blade. They learned to fold the metal, to hammer it, and reheat it until the carbon was evenly distributed, creating steel that was both hard and flexible. The process of making a sword was almost mystical in its complexity. The smith would heat the steel to precise temperatures, judging by color in the dim light of the forge. Cherry red for initial shaping, orange for final forging, and straw yellow for the careful process of tempering. Too hot, and the steel would burn, becoming brittle and worthless. Too cool, and it would not shape properly, remaining soft and unable to hold an edge. The blade's geometry was crucial to its performance. The fuller, that groove running down the center of many swords, was not a blood groove as legend claims, but a careful reduction of weight without loss of strength. The taper from hilt to point, the diamond cross-section, the careful balance between flexibility and rigidity. Every aspect was calculated to create the perfect weapon. Different regions developed their traditions of swordcraft. German smiths favored practical, efficient designs that emphasized cutting power. Italian masters created elegant weapons that were as much art as armament. English swordsmiths produced sturdy, reliable blades that could withstand the rough use of campaign and battlefield. Each tradition contributed to the evolution of the sword, sharing techniques and competing for supremacy. The rise of the longsword coincided with the development of sophisticated martial arts. In the hands of masters like Johannes Lichtenauer and Fiore de Liberi, the longsword became the foundation of entire fighting systems. These men wrote treatises on swordplay, creating detailed manuals that taught everything from basic cuts to advanced grappling techniques. Their work elevated swordsmanship from mere butchery to high art. Watch as the two swordsmen resume their practice. The younger man attempts a thrust with his arming sword, but the master deflects it with a technique called winding, turning his blade to redirect the attack while simultaneously threatening with a counterthrust. The longsword's extended grip allows for precise blade control, turning defense into offense in a single fluid motion. The evolution of the sword reflects the changing nature of medieval warfare. The arming sword belonged to an age of mounted knights and shield walls, when individual combat was common and armor was relatively light. The longsword arose in a time of disciplined infantry and sophisticated armor, when reach and power mattered more than speed and agility. But both weapons share certain qualities that made them legendary. The sword was more than a tool. It was a symbol of knighthood, of justice, of the divine right to rule. A knight's sword was blessed by priests, named like a beloved companion, and passed down through generations as a family treasure. To break a knight's sword was to destroy not just his weapon but his honor, his very identity. The training yard grows quiet as the lesson ends. The two swordsmen bow formally to each other, their blades held in salute. The master sheaths his long sword with practiced ease, while the student carefully cleans and oils his arming sword. Both weapons will rest now, but tomorrow they will sing again in the hands of warriors who understand their deadly poetry. Let the gentle sounds of the training yard fade from your consciousness. The clash of steel becomes a whisper, then silence. The sun climbs higher, burning away the morning mist, and the ancient oaks cast longer shadows across the packed earth. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolls the hour, marking time's passage in this place where tradition lives on. You don't need to remember every detail of sword construction or the names of the masters who wielded them. Let those facts settle gently in your mind like dust motes dancing in sunbeams. What matters is the feeling, the weight of steel in skilled hands, the deadly grace of combat as art, the quiet pride of craftsmen who turned raw iron into legends. The training yard empties as the morning wears on. Knights and squires return to their duties, their lessons learned for another day. The weapons rest in their scabbards, patient and silent, waiting for the next time they will be called upon to dance their ancient dance of steel and skill. The training yard grows quiet, and we drift elsewhere. The swords fade into shadow, their steel song becoming part of the countless tales of medieval weapons that shaped the world. Rest now, knowing that somewhere in the quiet of history, the perfect blade waits, balanced and true, ready to sing its song of steel for those who understand its ancient language. You stand atop a castle wall, the distant creak of a trebuchet filling the air. The morning mist clings to the valley below, where a great army has made its camp. Banners flutter in the gentle breeze, and smoke rises from countless cooking fires. But your attention is drawn to the massive wooden structure that looms like a cathedral of war in the enemy's midst. The trebuchet stands silent for now, its great arm cocked back like a giant's finger preparing to flick away a troublesome insect. Let the weight of stone beneath your feet ground you. Feel the cool morning air on your face as you gaze out at this theater of medieval warfare. The siege has already lasted 3 months, and both sides have settled into the patient rhythm of this most methodical form of warfare. Unlike the quick clash of cavalry charges or the brutal confusion of infantry battles, a siege is a slow dance of engineering and endurance, where time itself becomes a weapon and hunger fights alongside sword and stone. The trebuchet below is a marvel of medieval engineering. 60 feet tall and built from the finest oak, it represents weeks of work by skilled carpenters and engineers. The massive counterweight, a wooden box filled with tons of stone and earth, hangs motionless at the short end of the great arm. When released, that weight will fall with the fury of gravity itself, hurling the arm forward and sending its stone projectile arcing through the sky with devastating force. Watch in your mind's eye as the siege engineers prepare their great machine. They move with the careful precision of men who know that one mistake could send tons of stone and timber crashing down upon them. The sling at the end of the arm is loaded with a boulder the size of a wine barrel, its rough surface chosen specifically to shatter upon impact and spray deadly fragments in all directions. The mathematics of destruction are surprisingly elegant. The trebuchet's power comes not from human muscle, but from the patient pull of the earth itself. The counterweight, often weighing 10 tons or more, stores potential energy like a coiled spring. When released, that energy transforms into kinetic force, launching projectiles that can weigh 300 pounds over distances of more than 1,000 feet. Feel the tension in the air as the great machine prepares to speak. The engineers have calculated the angle, adjusted the counterweight, and checked every rope and timber. The target, a section of the castle wall that has already been weakened by previous bombardments, waits in patient silence. Stone walls that have stood for centuries are no match for the persistent hammering of these wooden giants. The trebuchet was not the first siege engine to batter castle walls. Before it came the mangonels and onagers, torsion engines that used twisted ropes and sinews to store energy. These machines, inherited from Roman engineers, could hurl stones with impressive force, but they were limited by the strength of their twisted fibers. The trebuchet, using gravity's inexorable pull, could achieve far greater power with less mechanical stress. But the trebuchet is only one voice in the siege's deadly chorus. Look to your left, where a massive battering ram shelters beneath a wooden roof called a cat or tortoise. The ram itself is a tree trunk the size of a ship's mast, capped with iron and suspended on chains. When 50 men put their shoulders to its work, it can pound against gates and walls with the force of a titan's fist. The defenders have their own weapons in this slow-motion battle. From the wall where you stand, crossbowmen can rain bolts down upon anyone foolish enough to approach too closely. Cauldrons of boiling oil wait near the gates, ready to pour death upon attackers. Stones and arrows are stockpiled in great heaps, and the castle's own engines, smaller trebuchets and mangonels, stand ready to answer the besiegers' challenge. Let your gaze drift to the siege towers rising in the distance. These mobile castles, built to match the height of the walls they assault, inch forward on massive wheels. Inside, dozens of soldiers wait in the dim, cramped spaces, ready to lower drawbridges and storm across onto the battlements. The towers are covered in wet hides to resist fire arrows, and their wooden walls are thick enough to stop crossbow bolts. The siege is as much about patience as it is about engineering. The attackers know that time is their ally if they can maintain their supply lines and prevent relief forces from reaching the castle. Hunger and disease are more deadly than any trebuchet, and a castle's well-stocked granaries can dwindle to nothing under the pressure of too many mouths and too little food. Inside the castle, the defenders face choices that will test their courage and resolve. Do they sally forth to destroy the siege engines, risking their lives in desperate attacks? Do they attempt to tunnel under the besiegers' camps, playing the dangerous game of mine and countermine? Or do they simply wait, hoping that winter or politics will force the enemy to withdraw? The science of siege warfare has evolved over centuries. Byzantine engineers perfected the use of Greek fire, a mysterious incendiary compound that could burn even on water. Muslim siege masters developed sophisticated techniques for undermining walls, digging tunnels and supporting them with timber that could be burned away at the crucial moment. European craftsmen learned to build engines that could hurl not just stones, but also the corpses of plague victims, turning disease into a weapon of war. Feel the ground beneath your feet tremble slightly. The trebuchet has begun its work. The counterweight falls with a sound like thunder, and the great arm whips forward with shocking speed. The stone projectile arcs through the morning air, a black dot against the pale sky, growing larger as it approaches its target. The impact, when it comes, is felt as much as heard, a deep, resonant crash that seems to shake the very foundations of the earth. The siege engines represent a different kind of warfare than the personal combat of knight against knight. Here, victory belongs not to the strongest arm or the keenest blade, but to the most patient engineer and the most skilled craftsman. The men who build these machines are scholars of destruction, applying mathematics and physics to the ancient art of breaking things. Watch as the siege engineers examine their handiwork. Through the slowly clearing dust, they can see that their stone has found its mark. A section of the wall has cracked, and loose stones have tumbled into the moat below. It's not a breach yet. That will take dozens more shots, but it's progress. The patient work of reduction continues, stone by stone, blow by blow. The defenders respond with their own engines. A mangonel on the wall's highest tower hurls a boulder toward the trebuchet, but the range is too great and the stone falls short, gouging a crater in the earth and sending the besiegers scurrying for cover. The psychological effect is as important as the physical. Both sides must show that they remain dangerous, that the siege is far from over. The rhythm of siege warfare is unlike any other form of combat. Days pass with nothing but the occasional thud of stones against stone, the creak of wooden engines, and the shouts of engineers making adjustments. Then, suddenly, the pace quickens as one side launches a major assault, and the air fills with arrows and screams and the clash of steel on steel. Let the sounds of the siege fade into a gentle murmur. The trebuchet has fallen silent for now, its crew taking their rest while carpenters check every joint and rope. The battering ram waits in its shelter, patient as a sleeping giant. The siege towers stand motionless, their crews gambling with dice and telling stories to pass the time. The siege is a waiting game where weeks can pass without decisive action. Supplies must be managed, morale maintained, and equipment repaired. The attackers must guard against sorties from the castle, while watching for relief forces approaching from the horizon. The defenders must husband their resources while looking for opportunities to strike back at their tormentors. As the sun climbs higher, the mist begins to burn away. The siege engines stand revealed in their full majesty and menace, wooden cathedrals dedicated to the art of destruction. They are marvels of engineering, testament to human ingenuity applied to the eternal problem of breaking what others have built to last. You don't need to remember every detail of trebuchet construction or the names of the engineers who perfected these machines. Let those facts settle gently in your mind like dust after a stone's impact. What matters is the feeling, the patient persistence of siege warfare, the marriage of mathematics and destruction, the quiet courage of men who built machines that could crack the strongest walls. The siege will continue for days or weeks or months. Stones will fly, walls will crumble, and eventually one side will yield to the other. But for now, there is only the patient work of engineers and the steady rhythm of wooden giants throwing stones at walls built by their grandfathers. As the siege fades into memory, we move to a new scene. The trebuchets and towers become shadows in the mist, their wooden voices joining the countless other stories of medieval warfare. Rest now, knowing that somewhere in the quiet of history, the great engines wait in patient silence, ready to speak their thunderous language for those who understand the slow art of siege. You're in a bustling city workshop, the air humming with the work of master craftsmen. The narrow street echoes with the rhythmic hammering of a dozen forges, each one tended by men who have devoted their lives to the ancient art of shaping steel. Through the open doorways, you can see the orange glow of furnaces and the silhouettes of armorers bent over their work, their hammers rising and falling in the timeless dance of creation. Let the gentle rhythm of the workshops embrace you. Feel the warmth radiating from the forges as you walk through this quarter of the city where steel is born. This is Milan in the year 1450, and you stand in the heart of the greatest armor-making center in all of Europe. The Massalia family and their rivals have turned this district into a maze of workshops, each one specializing in a different aspect of the armorer's craft. Here, raw iron becomes art, and protection becomes poetry written in polished steel. The Guild of Armorers governs this world with rules as carefully crafted as the armor they produce. Every master craftsman has earned his place through years of apprenticeship, learning not just the techniques of metalworking, but the sacred traditions that have been passed down through generations. The Guild controls quality, sets prices, and guards the secrets that make Milanese armor the finest in the world. Step into the workshop of Master Giovanni, whose grandfather's grandfather first heated iron in this very forge. The walls are lined with tools that have been shaped by decades of use. Hammers whose faces are worn smooth, stakes and anvils that bear the marks of countless blows, tongs that have grasped red-hot steel through the reigns of a dozen princes. Watch as the master examines a breastplate that has been months in the making. His fingers, scarred by years of hot metal and sharp edges, trace the curves of the steel with the sensitivity of a musician tuning his instrument. Every line must be perfect, every joint precisely fitted, every surface polished to mirror brightness. This is not mere metalwork. It is sculpture in service of war. The apprentices gather around their master like disciples. Young boys, some barely 12 years old, who will spend the next 7 years learning the mysteries of steel. They tend the fires, work the bellows, and practice the simple techniques that will one day bloom into mastery. Their small hands are already growing calloused, their eyes already learning to judge the color of heated metal in the dim light of the forge. Feel the heat radiating from the furnace as it's stoked for the day's work. The charcoal glows white-hot, its temperature carefully controlled by the movement of the bellows. Too hot and the steel will burn, its carbon content destroyed. Too cool, and it will not shape properly, remaining stubborn and unworkable. The master armorer knows these temperatures by sight, by sound, by the very feel of the air near the fire. The guild's reputation extends far beyond the borders of Milan. Kings and princes from across Europe send their orders here, along with purses heavy with gold. A complete suit of Milanese armor costs more than a nobleman's yearly income, but those who can afford it know they are purchasing more than protection. They are buying a masterpiece that will be treasured for generations. Each piece begins as a flat sheet of the finest steel. The metal has been forged and reforged, folded and hammered until its structure is uniform and strong. The armorer marks out the shape with chalk. Then begins the slow process of forming the curves that will follow the human body. This is not simply a matter of strength. It requires an understanding of anatomy, of mathematics, of the way force flows across curved surfaces. The techniques used here are closely guarded secrets. The guild members have sworn oaths never to reveal their methods to outsiders, and the penalty for breaking these vows is exile from the brotherhood. The way to achieve the perfect temper, the secret of creating joints that move smoothly yet seal tightly, the formulas for the polishing compounds that give Milanese armor its legendary shine. All of these are treasures more valuable than gold. Let your mind drift to the specialized workshops that support the main forges. In one corner, a master works exclusively on helmets, his skill so refined that he can create a sallet that fits as perfectly as a second skin. In another, an old man whose eyes have grown dim continues to work by feel alone, crafting the tiny rivets and hinges that hold a suit of armor together. Each craftsman has found his calling within the greater art. The guild maintains strict standards of apprenticeship. A boy begins by sweeping floors and tending fires, learning to read the moods of the forge and the temper of the masters. Gradually, he is allowed to work the bellows, then to hold pieces steady while the master shapes them. Only after years of faithful service will he be trusted with a hammer of his own. The journeyman's test is a rite of passage that has remained unchanged for centuries. The candidate must forge a complete piece of armor, perhaps a gauntlet or a kudo, working alone and in silence while the guild masters observe. Every curve must be perfect, every joint must move smoothly, every surface must be finished to the guild's exacting standards. Failure means beginning the apprenticeship anew. Watch as Master Giovanni demonstrates the art of raising a breastplate. The steel disc, heated to a cherry red, is placed over a forming block carved from hardwood. With careful, measured blows, he begins to shape the metal, working from the center outward in ever-widening spirals. Each hammer blow must be precisely placed, with just the right amount of force. Too hard and the steel will crack or thin dangerously. Too soft, and the curve will be uneven, creating weak points that could prove fatal in battle. The workshop specializes in different types of armor for different purposes. Field armor, designed for the battlefield, emphasizes protection and mobility. Tournament armor, meant for the pageantry of the lists, can be heavier and more ornate. Parade armor, intended for ceremonial occasions, becomes a canvas for the most skilled decorators, who etch intricate patterns and gild the surfaces with gold leaf. The guild's influence extends beyond mere craftsmanship. These master armorers are consulted on military matters, their understanding of metallurgy and engineering making them valuable advisors to princes and generals. They correspond with scholars and artists, sharing knowledge that advances not just the art of armor, but the broader understanding of materials and design. The competition between the great armoring families drives innovation. The Massalia workshop might develop a new joint design, only to find that the Negroli family has created an even more elegant solution. This rivalry, conducted with the courtesy of professionals but the intensity of artists, pushes the craft to ever greater heights of perfection. Feel the pride that radiates from every craftsman in this quarter. These men know that their work will outlast them, that armor forged in their workshops will be treasured by collectors centuries hence. They are not just metal workers, but guardians of a tradition that stretches back to the very beginning of civilization, when the first smith learned to shape iron with fire and force. The guild maintains its own chapel. Here, the patron saint of metalworkers is honored with prayers and offerings. The armorers know that their skill, however great, depends ultimately on forces beyond their control. The quality of the ore, the behavior of the fire, the blessing of fortune that keeps accidents at bay. Their prayers rise with the smoke from their forges, asking for steady hands and true eyes. As the afternoon light slants through the workshop windows, the masters begin to bank their fires. The day's work is nearly done, but the forge will never truly rest. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new pieces to be shaped, new problems to be solved. The guild's work continues, as it has for generations, as it will for generations to come. The apprentices carefully clean and store their tools. Each hammer, each stake, each pair of tongs has its proper place. The workshop may look chaotic to an outsider, but every item is precisely where it should be, ready for the next day's work. This order, this discipline, is part of what makes the guild great. Let the sounds of the workshop fade into gentle quiet. The hammers fall silent, the bellows cease their sighing, and the forges burn down to glowing coals. The master craftsmen file out into the narrow streets, their day's work complete, their legacy secure in the armor they have created. You don't need to remember every detail of the guild's organization or the names of its most famous masters. Let those facts settle gently in your mind like the fine dust that coats every surface in a metalworker's shop. What matters is the feeling, the dedication to perfection, the pride in ancient traditions, the quiet satisfaction of work well done. The workshop grows still, and the story carries us forward. The guild halls fade into shadow, their forges joining the countless other tales of medieval craftsmanship. Rest now, knowing that somewhere in the quiet of history, the master armorers continue their work, shaping steel with the same care and skill that has defined their craft for centuries. You're in a tournament field, banners fluttering softly in the breeze. The morning air carries the scent of trampled grass and the distant sound of horses stamping in their stalls. All around you, pavilions of silk and canvas create a city of color, each one displaying the arms and devices of noble houses from across the realm. The tournament ground itself is a living tapestry of heraldry, where every shield, every banner, every piece of armor tells a story of lineage, honor, and identity. Let the gentle flutter of silk banners calm your spirit. Feel the soft grass beneath your feet as you wander through this magnificent display of medieval pageantry. Before you stands a knight preparing for the lists, his armor gleaming in the morning sun like polished silver. But this is no plain harness of steel. Every surface bears the marks of his identity, his achievements, his place in the complex web of noble society. The breastplate displays his coat of arms, enameled in brilliant blues and golds that catch the light with every movement. His shield bears the same device, while his helm is crowned with a crest that proclaims his family's ancient honors. The language of heraldry is as complex and precise as any written script. Every color has meaning. Every symbol carries significance. Every combination tells a story that the initiated can read as easily as a manuscript. The azure field of his shield speaks of loyalty and truth, while the golden lion rampant declares courage and nobility. The 3 silver stars above the lion's head mark him as a third son, while the red chevron across the bottom recalls some ancient deed of valor performed by his ancestor. Watch as the herald calls out the knight's full style and titles. Sir Edmund de Montfort, Knight of the Order of the Garter, Lord of Ashwell and Thornbury, bearer of the Azure Lion. Each word is carefully chosen, each title earned through service or inheritance. The herald's voice carries across the field, ensuring that every spectator knows exactly who is about to risk life and limb for honor and glory. The knight's armor itself is a canvas for heraldic art. Look closely at the pauldrons that guard his shoulders. Each one bears a different device, telling the story of his alliances and connections. The right shoulder displays his paternal arms, while the left shows the quarterings inherited from his mother's line. The sabaton on his right foot bears the badge of his sovereign, while the left carries the symbol of his military order. Feel the weight of tradition that rests on every piece of this decorated steel. This armor is not merely protection. It is a proclamation of identity that can be read from across a battlefield. In the chaos of combat, when faces are hidden behind visors and voices are lost in the clash of steel, heraldry provides the only means of recognition. A knight's arms are his name written in color and metal, his identity made manifest in symbols that will outlast his mortal flesh. The tournament is more than a martial contest. It is a gathering of the entire heraldic world. Knights from distant lands display arms that tell of conquests and alliances, of ancient bloodlines and modern achievements. The crowd itself is a study in social hierarchy, with the placement of banners and the richness of display marking each participant's place in the complex web of noble society. Let your gaze drift to the royal pavilion. Here, the greatest display of heraldic art unfolds in silk and gold thread. The king's banner bears the quartered arms of his dominions, each quarter representing a kingdom, duchy, or ancient claim. The supporters, the mythical beasts that flank the royal shield, are embroidered with such skill that they seem ready to leap from the fabric. This is heraldry at its most magnificent, where art and politics merge in a display of power that can be seen from the farthest edge of the field. The heralds themselves are guardians of this visual language. These learned men have spent years mastering the intricate rules that govern the display of arms, the proper way to quarter a shield, the correct method of showing cadency and difference. They are part genealogist, part artist, part diplomat, ensuring that every banner flies correctly and every claim is properly displayed. The tournament armor worn by the knights represents the highest achievement of both armorers and herald painters. The steel must be perfectly fitted and beautifully finished, while the heraldic decoration must be applied with meticulous care. The paints and enamels used are the finest available, mixed with secret formulas that ensure the colors will remain brilliant even after repeated impacts from lance and sword. Watch as a young knight enters the lists for the first time. His armor is simpler than that of the veterans, his heraldry limited to the basic arms of his family. But even these simple devices carry weight and meaning. The red cross on his shield marks him as a crusader, though he has never seen the Holy Land. The blue chief at the top of his field honors his grandfather's service to the crown. Every element has been carefully chosen to tell his story and honor his ancestors. The ladies in the viewing stands display their own heraldic finery. Their gowns are embroidered with the arms of their husbands or fathers, while their jewelry incorporates heraldic motifs in gold and precious stones. Even their horses' trappings bear heraldic devices, creating a moving gallery of noble identity. This is a world where clothing itself becomes a form of visual communication, where every thread and jewel carries meaning. The relationship between armor and heraldry evolved over centuries. In the early days of mail and simple helms, knights could be recognized by their faces and voices. But as armor became more complete and covering, the need for visual identification grew more pressing. What began as simple painted shields evolved into the complex system of heraldic display that now adorns every surface of a knight's equipment. Feel the pride that radiates from every heraldic display. These are not mere decorations, but sacred symbols that connect the bearer to generations of ancestors. The knight who wears these arms carries with him the honor of his entire lineage, the accumulated reputation of fathers and grandfathers stretching back to the dawn of chivalry. To bear arms falsely is not just deception but sacrilege, a crime against the very foundation of noble society. The tournament field becomes a living textbook of heraldic law. Here you can see examples of every type of heraldic display: simple arms and complex quarterlings, ancient devices and modern grants, the arms of kings and the humble bearings of minor knights. Each tells a story of service, marriage, conquest, or royal favor. The initiated can read these stories like pages in a book, tracing the rise and fall of noble houses through the symbols they display. The craft of heraldic decoration requires its own specialized artisans. Herald painters train for years to master the techniques of working on metal, learning to prepare surfaces, mix colors, and apply decorations that will withstand the rigors of combat. Some specialize in painting arms on shields and armor, while others focus on the intricate work of manuscript illumination or the grand displays of banners and tapestries. Watch as the tournament begins in earnest. Knights charge down the lists, their heraldic splendor creating a blur of color and motion. The crowd cheers not just for the skill displayed, but for the honor of the houses represented. When a knight falls, it is not just a man who has been defeated, but a symbol, a living representation of noble identity that has been brought low. The heraldic system serves practical as well as ceremonial purposes. In battle, a commander must be able to identify his troops at a glance, to know which units are where and which lords are still fighting. The great battles of the age are remembered not just for their strategies and casualties, but for the heraldic roll call of the fallen, the list of arms that will never again be seen in the field. Let the sounds of the tournament fade into gentle quiet. The cheers of the crowd become whispers, the clash of lance on shield grows soft and distant. The banners still flutter in the breeze, but their colors begin to blur and fade, becoming memories of a pageant that exists now only in the stories of those who witnessed it. The heraldic world is one of infinite complexity and beauty. Every noble house has its own story written in the language of color and symbol, its own place in the great tapestry of medieval society. The arms they bear connect them to the past and project their identity into the future, ensuring that their names and deeds will be remembered long after their mortal bodies have returned to dust. You don't need to remember every rule of heraldic blazon or the meaning of every symbol. Let those details settle gently in your mind like the settling dust after a cavalry charge. What matters is the feeling, the pride in identity, the connection to ancestry, the beautiful complexity of a world where every night was a walking work of art. The tournament field grows quiet as the afternoon shadows lengthen. The knights retire to their pavilions, their armor carefully cleaned and stored away. The banners are furled, the crowds disperse, and the great heraldic display that has filled the day with color and meaning begins to fade into memory. As the banners fade, we drift to another time. The heraldic splendor becomes part of the countless stories of medieval chivalry, joining the great tapestry of armor and honor that defined an age. Rest now, knowing that somewhere in the quiet of history, the ancient arms still flutter in the breeze, ready to tell their stories to those who understand the language of nobility and honor. You're in a quiet armory, the faint smell of sulfur lingering in the air like a whispered secret from another world. The stone walls are lined with familiar friends, gleaming breastplates, polished helms, and rows of swords that have served faithfully for generations. But tonight, there's something different here, something that makes the shadows seem deeper and the silence more profound. Let your breathing slow as you notice the gentle draft that stirs the dust motes in the candlelight. The armory feels peaceful, almost sacred, but there's a sense of change drifting through the air like smoke from a distant fire. You don't need to hold on to these details. Just let them wash over you like a gentle tide. In the corner, partially hidden beneath a heavy cloth, sits something new. Something that would have been unimaginable to the knights of old. It's a hand cannon, crude and blackened, its iron barrel thick as a man's arm. The acrid scent of gunpowder clings to it still, a sharp contrast to the familiar smell of oiled steel and polished leather that has filled this space for centuries. You can almost hear the whispers of the armorers as they work by lamplight, their voices soft with worry and wonder. The world is changing, they murmur, their hammers tapping more slowly now, more thoughtfully. The old ways, they may not be enough anymore. Picture yourself as a master armorer in this time of transition, around the year 1450. Your grandfather crafted mail, your father perfected plate, and you must learn to work with something entirely new. The weight of tradition rests on your shoulders like a familiar cloak, but the winds of change are stirring, gentle but persistent. The first firearms began appearing in European battles around the 1300s, arriving quietly like morning mist. They were crude things then, simple tubes of iron or bronze, heavy and unreliable. Knights barely paid them attention, these loud, smoky contraptions that took forever to load and often failed to fire. Plate armor, perfected over centuries, could turn aside their weak shots as easily as deflecting a child's stone. But time, as it always does, moved forward with quiet persistence. Let yourself drift back to those early days, when the sound of a primitive cannon was still a novelty that made horses rear and men cover their ears. The smoke would billow across the battlefield like a gray blanket, and when it cleared, both sides would often find that very little had changed. The knights in their gleaming armor would continue their dance of steel, largely untroubled by these noisy newcomers. You can feel the cool touch of steel beneath your fingertips as you imagine running your hand along a breastplate from this era. Notice how thick it is, how solid. The armorers of the 1400s were the finest craftsmen the world had ever known. They could shape steel like clay, creating armor that was both beautiful and functional. Each piece was a work of art, fitted precisely to its wearer's body, articulated with hinges and joints that allowed for surprising mobility. But as the decades passed, something began to change. The firearms grew more powerful, more accurate, more reliable. The hand cannons became arquebus, then muskets. The metallurgy improved, the gunpowder became more refined, and slowly, so slowly that many didn't notice at first, the balance of warfare began to shift. Feel the weight of this change settling over you like a soft blanket. There's no need to grasp at the details. Let them flow through your mind like a gentle stream. You're an armorer now, and a knight has come to commission a new suit of armor. But this isn't like the old days. This knight has seen what the new weapons can do, and his requests are different. Make the breastplate thicker, he says, his voice tired but determined. I've seen what those fire sticks can do to Milan steel. You nod, understanding the weight of his words. The armor you create will be heavier than what your father made, and heavier still than what your grandfather crafted. Each generation of armorers is adding more steel, more thickness, trying to keep pace with the ever-improving firearms. The irony settles over you like evening shadows. For centuries, armor had been evolving to become lighter, more flexible, more elegant. The late medieval period had seen the creation of suits that were marvels of engineering. Protective yet allowing a knight to mount his horse unassisted, to fight on foot with surprising agility. But now the pendulum is swinging back toward weight and bulk. You can almost hear the complaints of the knights as they struggle with these new, heavier suits. The ones who can afford them, anyway. A suit of bulletproof armor, thick enough to stop a musket ball, costs more than a small farm. The additional steel, the extra hours of work, the specialized techniques required to forge such thick plates. It all adds up to a price that fewer and fewer can afford. Let your mind drift to a battlefield of this era, perhaps somewhere in Italy or Germany. The morning mist hangs low over the field, and you can see the two armies arrayed against each other. On one side, the traditional forces, knights in their gleaming armor, their colorful banners fluttering in the breeze. On the other, something new. Ranks of soldiers carrying long firearms, their dark clothing making them look like shadows against the dawn. The battle unfolds with a terrible kind of beauty. The knights charge as they always have, their armor catching the early light like scattered stars. But then comes the sound, a rolling thunder of gunfire that seems to go on forever. The smoke billows across the field, and when it clears, everything has changed. You don't need to hold on to the sadness of it. Just let it wash over you and drift away. This is the nature of time, after all. Everything changes, everything passes, and new things take the place of old. The knights who survive this day will go home with new knowledge, new respect for these weapons that seemed so crude just a few decades ago. In your armory, you continue your work, but it's different now. You're still an artist, still a craftsman, but you're also an engineer solving new problems. How do you make armor that can stop a bullet, but won't crush the man wearing it? How do you balance protection with mobility when the threat has changed so fundamentally? Some of your fellow armorers are experimenting with new designs. Helmets with reinforced visors, breastplates with a pronounced ridge down the center to help deflect shots, articulated joints that allow for easier movement despite the increased weight. Others are simply making thicker versions of traditional designs, adding layer upon layer of steel until the armor becomes more like a walking fortress than a second skin. The smell of the forge fills your nostrils, that familiar blend of coal smoke, hot metal, and the sharp scent of quenching oil. But now there's something else mixed in, that lingering odor of gunpowder that seems to cling to everything these days. It's not unpleasant, exactly, but it's different. It speaks of a world that's moving away from the elegant choreography of sword and lance toward something more direct. Feel the rhythm of your hammer as you work, the steady beat that has echoed through this armory for generations. But listen carefully, and you might hear something else, the distant sound of musket fire from the training grounds, where young soldiers are learning to use these new weapons. The two sounds create an odd harmony, the ancient and the modern keeping time together. You pause in your work and look around the armory. The walls are still lined with the products of centuries of craftsmanship, each piece a testament to the skill and dedication of the armorers who came before you. But now there are new tools on the workbench, new books describing metallurgy and ballistics, new challenges that require new solutions. The knights still come, of course. They still need armor, still value the protection it provides. But they're different now, more practical, more aware of the limitations of even the finest steel. They ask questions about thickness, about weight distribution, about how to move quickly in heavy armor. The romantic ideals of knighthood are giving way to pragmatic concerns about survival. Let yourself drift deeper into this world of transition. You're working late into the night, the forge fire casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Outside, the world is changing in ways that would have been unimaginable to your grandfather. Cannons are becoming common on battlefields, castles are being redesigned to withstand artillery, and the very nature of warfare is evolving. But here in your armory, surrounded by the tools and techniques passed down through generations, there's a sense of continuity. You're still shaping steel, still creating protection for those who need it. The methods may be evolving, the challenges may be new, but the fundamental purpose remains the same. As you work, you think about the knights who will wear this armor. They're not so different from the ones who came before. They still have homes to protect, causes to serve, people who depend on them. The weapons may have changed, but the need for courage, for honor, for someone willing to stand between the innocent and harm, that remains constant. The candlelight flickers, and you realize how late it's become. The armor you're crafting is nearly complete, a masterpiece of the new age, thick enough to stop a musket ball, but articulated with such skill that its wearer will still be able to move with grace. It's heavier than the armor of your grandfather's time, but it's also more sophisticated, more carefully engineered. You run your hand along the smooth surface of the breastplate, feeling the slight warmth that still radiates from the metal. Tomorrow, a knight will come to collect this armor, and it will begin its real work. Not as a display piece, but as a tool of survival in a world where the rules of combat are being rewritten. But that's tomorrow's story. Tonight, as the forge fire burns low and the shadows grow long, you can rest in the satisfaction of work well done. You've met the challenge of your time, adapted your craft to new realities while honoring the traditions that shaped you. The armor you've created is both ancient and modern, traditional and innovative, a perfect reflection of this moment in history when the old world and the new are learning to coexist. The smoke from the dying fire drifts lazily toward the ceiling, carrying with it the scent of hot metal and honest work. Let that smoke carry away any tension you might be holding, any worries about the day ahead. You've done your part in the great story of steel and craftsmanship, and now it's time to rest. As the armory grows quiet around you, you can almost hear the whispers of all the armorers who came before, masters of their craft who face their own challenges, their own changes, their own moments of uncertainty about the future. They're all here with you in spirit, their knowledge and skill flowing through your hands, their dedication to excellence living on in every piece you create. The world outside may be changing, but some things remain constant. The desire to protect, to serve, to create something beautiful and functional with your own hands. These are timeless human impulses that connect you to craftsmen across the centuries. Whether they worked with bronze or iron, mail or plate, they all understood the satisfaction of taking raw materials and transforming them into something greater. Let the weight of history settle over you like a comfortable blanket. You're part of a tradition that stretches back to the first human who picked up a piece of metal and decided to shape it into something useful. That tradition will continue long after you're gone, adapting and evolving but never truly ending. The last ember in the forge winks out, and darkness settles over the armory like a gentle embrace. But it's not a sad darkness, it's the peaceful darkness of a job well done, of a day's work completed, of a craftsman ready to rest. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow and adapt, but tonight belongs to contentment and quiet satisfaction. As the armory grows still, the story moves gently on, carrying us forward through time like a river flowing toward the sea. The age of the knight may be ending, but the age of human ingenuity, of craftsmanship, of the eternal dance between tradition and innovation, That story is just beginning a new chapter. Let your breathing slow and deepen as you drift away from the quiet armory, carrying with you the scent of steel and the satisfaction of honest work. The world of armor and weapons continues its slow evolution, but you've played your part in that grand story, and now it's time to rest. You're in a bustling market, the air filled with the clink of coins and the murmur of trade. But even here, in this symphony of commerce, there's a gentleness to the morning. The cobblestones beneath your feet are worn smooth by centuries of merchants, customers, and craftsmen who have walked these same paths. Let your breathing slow as you take in the familiar sounds. The soft jingle of purses, the whispered negotiations, the distant ring of a hammer on anvil. The market square stretches before you like a tapestry woven from 100 different lives. Wooden stalls line the edges, their canvas awnings fluttering gently in the breeze. The scent of fresh bread mingles with the sharper smell of worked leather and oiled steel. You don't need to hold on to every detail. Just let them drift through your awareness like leaves on a quiet stream. You are a merchant in this world, a trader in the tools of war and protection. Your stall sits at the heart of the market, strategically placed where knights, soldiers, and nobles pass by on their way to the castle. The morning light filters through the canvas overhead, casting everything in a warm, golden glow that makes even the most practical sword seem to shimmer with possibility. Your hands move with practiced ease as you arrange your wares. Each piece has traveled far to reach this market. Some forged in the smoky workshops of Milan, others crafted in the bustling armories of Nuremberg. The swords catch the light, their polished blades reflecting the faces of passers-by. Daggers rest in neat rows, their hilts wrapped in leather still supple from the craftsman's touch. A collection of mail shirts hangs from wooden pegs, their rings creating a soft, musical chime when the wind stirs them. Feel the weight of history in your hands as you lift a particularly fine blade. This sword began its journey as iron ore, pulled from the earth in some distant mountain. It was smelted in furnaces that burned day and night, shaped by hammers that had been swinging for generations, tempered in waters that had cooled countless blades before it. And now, after traveling hundreds of miles along dusty roads and riverways, it rests in your hands, waiting for its next chapter to begin. The trade routes that bring these weapons to your market are like invisible threads connecting the entire medieval world. From the iron mines of Germany to the forges of Italy, from the leather workers of England to the skilled metalworkers of Spain, a vast network of craftsmen and merchants work together to put tools of war and protection into the hands of those who need them. Let yourself drift back to the early morning hours, when the market was just beginning to stir. You arrived before dawn, as you always do, to arrange your stall and prepare for the day's trade. The cool air carried the scent of dew and wood smoke, and the only sounds were the gentle lowing of cattle and the distant call of roosters greeting the sun. As you worked in the pre-dawn darkness, you could hear the soft footsteps of other merchants setting up their stalls. The baker arranging his loaves, the cloth merchant hanging his finest fabrics, the spice trader carefully measuring his precious powders. Each of you playing your part in the great dance of commerce that keeps the medieval world turning. The first customer of the day was a young knight, barely old enough to grow a proper beard, but with the unmistakable bearing of nobility. He approached your stall with that mixture of confidence and uncertainty that marks the young and ambitious. His purse jingled softly as he walked, and you could see the careful calculation in his eyes as he examined your wares. "I need a sword," he said, his voice trying to sound more assured than he felt. "Something worthy of my station, but not too costly." You smiled, recognizing the eternal struggle of the young knight, wanting the finest equipment but lacking the deep purse of his elders. You guided him through your selection with the patience of someone who has had this conversation 1,000 times. The expensive blades from Milan, beautiful but beyond his means. The solid, practical weapons from local smiths, well-made but lacking the prestige he craved. And finally, the perfect compromise, a blade forged by a master craftsman's apprentice, bearing all the skill of the workshop, but not yet commanding the premium price. The negotiation was gentle, almost ritualistic. You spoke of the sword's qualities, its balance, its edge retention, the reputation of the smith who made it. He countered with tales of his own prowess, his family's honor, his need for a weapon that would serve him well in tournaments and battles yet to come. In the end, You reached an agreement that satisfied both of you, as merchants and customers have done since the beginning of time. As the morning progressed, the market filled with the steady stream of people that gives it life. Servants from the castle, sent to purchase supplies. Traveling merchants examining your wares with the practiced eye of those who know value when they see it. Local craftsmen looking for materials or inspiration. Each interaction is a small story, a moment of connection in the vast tapestry of medieval commerce. You pause in your work to watch a group of merchants from the Low Countries examining a suit of plate armor. They speak in hushed tones, their voices carrying the excitement of men who have found something special. The armor is magnificent, Italian work, probably from one of the famous workshops in Milan. Every piece is perfectly proportioned, the surfaces polished to a mirror shine. The articulation of the joints is so precise that the wearer could probably thread a needle while fully armored. But it's not just the craftsmanship that excites these merchants, it's the business opportunity. They're calculating shipping costs, considering which of their noble clients might be interested, estimating the profit margins. In their minds, they're already seeing this armor displayed in the markets of Bruges or Antwerp, where it will command a price that makes everyone in the chain of commerce smile. The trade in weapons and armor is more than just buying and selling. It's a complex web of relationships that spans continents. The iron ore from Sweden, the charcoal from German forests, the expertise of Italian armorers, the financial backing of Flemish merchants, all coming together to create the tools that define medieval warfare. Let your mind drift to the workshops where these weapons are born. You've visited many of them over the years, building the relationships that make your business possible. The heat of the forges, the rhythm of hammers, the intense concentration of craftsmen who have dedicated their lives to perfecting their art. Each workshop has its own character, its own specialties, its own secrets passed down through generations of masters and apprentices. In Milan, the armorers work in family businesses that have been running for centuries. The techniques they use are closely guarded secrets, passed from father to son like precious heirlooms. You've sat in their workshops, sharing wine and stories while they work, building the trust that allows them to share their finest pieces with your market. The German workshops are different, larger, more organized, with guilds that regulate quality and control production. Here, the emphasis is on consistency and reliability. A sword bearing the mark of a German guild carries a guarantee of quality that knights throughout Europe have learned to trust. The Spanish craftsmen bring their own traditions, influenced by contact with the Islamic world. Their steel has a different quality. Their designs carry subtle influences from Moorish metalwork. The daggers and swords from Toledo are prized throughout Europe for their exceptional sharpness and the beauty of their decoration. As the day progresses, you find yourself in conversation with a traveling merchant who has just returned from the Holy Land. He speaks of the markets in Jerusalem, where European weapons meet Eastern craftsmanship. The Damascus steel that has become legendary among knights, the curved swords that seem to hold their edge forever, the strange and wonderful armor worn by Saracen warriors. The world is larger than we imagine, he says, his voice soft with wonder. There are craftsmen in distant lands who work with techniques we've never seen, who create weapons that would amaze our finest smiths. You nod, understanding the mixture of excitement and humility that comes from glimpsing the vastness of human knowledge and skill. The afternoon brings a different kind of customer, a merchant like yourself, but one who specializes in the tools of peace rather than war. He's interested in the everyday items that your craft produces. The knives that cut bread, the tools that work leather, the implements that make daily life possible. It's a reminder that the skills that create weapons also create the tools that build civilization. Your conversation drifts to the changing nature of warfare, the rise of gunpowder weapons, the evolving needs of armies and knights. He's noticed the same trends you have, the increased demand for heavier armor, the growing interest in firearms, the way traditional weapons are being adapted for new kinds of combat. Change is the only constant, he observes, examining a particularly fine crossbow. The merchants who adapt survive, the ones who don't, well, they find other trades. You've been thinking the same thing, considering how to position your business for the future while honoring the traditions that have made you successful. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the market square, you reflect on the day's trade. The coins in your purse represent more than just profit. They're proof of connections made, relationships built, value created. Each transaction has been a small act of trust, a moment where strangers became partners in the great enterprise of commerce. The evening light turns everything golden, and the market begins to settle into its quieter rhythm. The last customers browse your remaining wares, their voices soft in the gathering dusk. The scent of cooking food drifts from the nearby taverns, mixing with the familiar smells of leather and steel that surround your stall. You begin the peaceful ritual of packing away your wares, each piece carefully wrapped and stored. The swords go into their cloth sheaths, the armor pieces nested together like puzzle pieces. Tomorrow will bring new customers, new opportunities, new challenges, but tonight is for rest and reflection. As you work, you think about the journey that brought you to this moment. The apprenticeship with an older merchant, learning to judge quality and value. The first tentative trips to distant workshops, building relationships with craftsmen. The gradual expansion of your network, the slow accumulation of knowledge and trust that makes your business possible. The market grows quiet around you, but it's not empty. The spirit of commerce lingers in the air like incense, a reminder of all the human connections that have been made here. Tomorrow, the cycle will begin again, but tonight, as you secure your stall and count your coins, you can rest in the satisfaction of honest work well done. The market grows quiet, and we drift to a new chapter, carrying with us the scent of honest trade and the gentle jingle of coins that speak of dreams fulfilled. You're in a humble village, the soft thud of a flail against grain filling the air like a gentle rhythm that has marked the seasons for countless generations. The sound is hypnotic, almost musical. The wooden handle whistling through the air, the leather hinges creaking softly, the satisfying impact as the swinging stick separates wheat from chaff. Let your breathing slow to match this ancient rhythm, this dance between human hands and the tools that feed the world. The barn around you is warm and dusty, filled with the golden light that filters through cracks in the wooden walls. Motes of grain dust drift lazily in the sunbeams, and the air carries the sweet scent of harvested wheat mixed with the earthier smell of well-worn wood and leather. You don't need to hold on to every detail. Just let them settle over you like a comfortable blanket. You are a peasant in this medieval world, your hands calloused from years of honest work, your back strong from bending to the rhythm of the seasons. The flail in your hands is more than just a tool. It's an extension of your body, shaped by countless hours of use until it fits your grip as naturally as breathing. The handle is worn smooth by your father's hands, and his father's before him, the wood darkened by generations of sweat and toil. But tonight, as you work in the peaceful barn, there's something different in the air. A tension that has nothing to do with the harvest, a weight that settles on your shoulders like morning mist. Word has come from the next village over. The Lord's men are demanding higher taxes, taking more grain than usual. There's talk of trouble, of other villages where the peasants have said enough. Feel the weight of the flail in your hands as you pause in your work. Such a simple thing, really, 2 pieces of wood connected by leather strips, designed to separate grain from stalk. But as you hold it, you can't help but notice how solid it feels, how the weighted head swings with such purpose. In skilled hands, it could do more than thresh wheat. The tools around you tell the story of peasant life, each one born from necessity, shaped by generations of use, adapted to the work that keeps the world fed. The pitchfork leaning against the wall, its tines sharp from years of piercing hay bales. The scythe hanging from its peg, its curved blade honed to a razor's edge for cutting grain. The heavy wooden staff that helps you walk the muddy paths between fields. Let your mind drift to the other peasants in your village, each with their own collection of tools, their own skills passed down through families like precious heirlooms. Old Willem with his woodcutter's axe, the blade so sharp it can split kindling with barely a touch. Young Matthias with his mason's hammer, heavy enough to shape stone but balanced perfectly for a day's work. The miller's wife with her kitchen knives, kept so keen they can slice through leather as easily as bread. These are the tools of peace, the implements that build and feed and shelter. But in times of trouble, when the powerful forget that the weak have hands and hearts and grievances of their own, these same tools can serve different purposes. The distinction between a farming implement and a weapon often lies not in the tool itself, but in the intention of the one who wields it. You resume your threshing, the steady rhythm helping to calm your troubled thoughts. The flail rises and falls, and with each swing you remember your grandfather's stories of the great uprising, when peasants across the land decided they had endured enough. He spoke of it in whispers, even decades later, his voice carrying a mixture of pride and sorrow. "We had no swords," he would say, his weathered hands tracing the air as if holding ghostly weapons. "No fine armor, no war horses. But we had our tools, and we had each other." The memory of his words settles over you like a gentle blanket, carrying with it the weight of generations who have faced the same struggles, the same impossible choices. The barn door creaks open, and your neighbor Johann enters, his face creased with worry. In his hands he carries his own flail, and behind him comes a handful of other men from the village, each bearing the tools of their trade. They move quietly, their footsteps soft on the straw-covered floor, but there's a determination in their bearing that speaks of decisions made and lines drawn. "The Lord's men came to my farm today," Johann says, his voice barely above a whisper. "They want half my grain, not the third we agreed to." Half! The words hang in the air like smoke, and you can see the anger and desperation in his eyes. This is more than taxation. This is starvation for the families who depend on that grain to survive the winter. The conversation that follows is soft but urgent, voices kept low but hearts laid bare. These are not warriors or revolutionaries. They are farmers and craftsmen, fathers and sons, people who want nothing more than to work their land and feed their families. But there comes a point where even the gentlest soul must decide whether to submit or resist. You listen to their planning, your flail still moving in its steady rhythm. They speak of other villages where the peasants have stood together, where the thread of unified resistance has made the lords reconsider their demands. It's not about violence. It's about showing that the people who grow the food and build the houses and tend the animals are not powerless, even if they lack fine weapons and expensive armor. The tools in your hands begin to look different as the conversation continues. The flail becomes more than a threshing tool. It's a symbol of the work that feeds the world and of the strength that comes from honest labor. The pitchfork transforms from a hay-moving implement into a reminder that peasants, too, have reach and leverage. The scythe shifts from a harvesting tool to a curved blade that can cut more than grain. Let yourself drift into the memories of your grandfather's stories, told by firelight on winter evenings. He spoke of the Great Revolt with the wisdom of someone who had seen both triumph and tragedy. "The tools we used were simple," he would say, "but they were ours. Made by our hands, shaped by our work, familiar as our own heartbeat." He told of battles fought not with the elaborate choreography of knightly combat, but with the desperate efficiency of people defending their homes. Peasants wielding flails with the same skill they used for threshing, but now the grain they separated was the wheat of justice from the chaff of oppression. Pitchforks used not to move hay, but to hold a line against mounted knights. Scythes swinging not to harvest crops, but to cut through the pretensions of those who thought themselves untouchable. The conversation in the barn grows more specific, more practical. How to organize the villages, how to coordinate their actions, how to present their grievances in a way that might lead to negotiation rather than bloodshed. These are not wild revolutionaries planning destruction. They are careful people trying to find a way to live with dignity while causing the least harm possible. As the evening deepens, the golden light in the barn fades to a warm amber glow. The rhythm of your flail continues, a steady counterpoint to the quiet discussions around you. In this peaceful moment, surrounded by the tools of honest work and the voices of decent people, you can almost forget the troubles that brought you all together. But the weight of decision remains. Tomorrow, you may have to choose between submission and resistance, between the safety of acceptance and the risk of standing up. The tools in your hands will remain the same, but their purpose may change forever. The flail that feeds your family may become the weapon that defends them. The barn grows quiet except for the soft thud of grain being separated from chaff, the eternal rhythm of harvest that has marked the seasons since the beginning of time. Whatever tomorrow brings, tonight there is still work to be done, grain to be processed, families to be fed. The tools of peace continue their ancient purpose, even as they wait to serve new needs. As the last of the grain is threshed and the men begin to drift away into the night, you remain in the barn, your flail still moving in its hypnotic rhythm. The weight of the coming days settles over you like a gentle blanket, but there's also a strange peace in knowing that whatever happens, you will not face it alone. The tools around you seem to whisper stories of all the hands that have held them, all the work they have done, all the purposes they have served. They are humble things, these implements of daily life, but they carry within them the strength of generations and the stubborn dignity of those who work with their hands. As the village settles into night, the story moves on, carrying us forward through time like a river flowing toward the sea. The tools of peace wait patiently for whatever tomorrow may bring, ready to serve the needs of those who wield them with honest hearts and calloused hands. You're in a quiet museum, the faint glow of candlelight catching on ancient steel like whispered memories from a distant age. The air is hushed here, filled with the reverent silence that surrounds precious things. Soft footsteps echo gently on polished floors, and the very walls seem to breathe with the weight of centuries. Let your shoulders relax as you take in this peaceful sanctuary where the past rests safely, protected and honored. The display cases stretch before you like windows into time, each one holding treasures that once shaped the world. A suit of plate armor stands in silent dignity, its polished surface reflecting the gentle light. The metal seems to glow with its own inner fire, as if the skill and devotion of its long-dead creator still lives within the steel. You don't need to memorize every detail. Just let the beauty of it wash over you like a gentle tide. Behind the glass, a collection of swords rests on velvet cushions, their blades no longer sharp but still beautiful. Each one tells a story. The nicks and scratches that speak of battles fought, the elegant curves that reveal the master's hand, the simple beauty of steel shaped by human skill and dedication. These weapons have outlived the warriors who carried them, outlived the kingdoms they defended, outlived the very world that created them. Feel the peace that surrounds these ancient artifacts. Once they were tools of war, instruments of conflict and struggle. But time has transformed them into something else entirely. Teachers, storytellers, bridges between the past and present. They no longer threaten or protect. Instead, they inspire and educate, carrying forward the memory of the craftsmen who made them and the people who used them. You move slowly through the museum, your footsteps soft on the cool stone floor. In one case, a collection of arrowheads speaks of the yeoman archers who once drew English longbows. In another, fragments of chainmail tell the story of Norman knights crossing the Channel. Each piece is a thread in the vast tapestry of human history, woven together by the common thread of steel and the hands that shaped it. The museum curator, an elderly scholar with gentle eyes and patient hands, approaches with the quiet step of someone who has spent a lifetime among these treasures. Each piece has a story, she says softly, her voice carrying the warmth of someone who truly loves what she does. The armor over there was worn by a knight who fought in the Holy Land. The sword beside it was forged by a master craftsman in Toledo. They've traveled far to reach us. Let your mind drift to the journey these artifacts have taken. Centuries ago, they were new and bright, fresh from the forge and ready for service. They protected lives, decided battles, shaped the fate of kingdoms. Then, as the world changed and their time passed, they became curiosities, then antiques, then historical treasures worthy of preservation and study. The armor in the central display seems to glow in the soft light, its articulated joints still smooth after all these years. You can almost imagine the knight who once wore it, his morning ritual of being armed by his squire, the weight of the metal becoming familiar and comfortable, the sense of security and purpose it provided. Now it stands empty but somehow still noble, a monument to the courage of those who trusted their lives to steel and skill. Near the window, a collection of tools rests beside the weapons. The hammers and tongs used by blacksmiths, the files and whetstones that kept blades sharp, the simple implements that created these marvels. They remind you that behind every sword and suit of armor stood craftsmen, whose names history has forgotten, but whose legacy lives on in the beauty of their work. The late afternoon sun streams through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the displays. In this golden light, the steel seems to come alive, sharing its warmth with the cool air of the museum. You can almost hear the distant ring of hammers, the hiss of hot metal meeting water, the satisfied sigh of a craftsman completing a masterpiece. The curator leads you to a special display, a collection of modern tools and weapons that show how the ancient arts continue to evolve. Computer-controlled machines that can forge steel with precision undreamed of by medieval smiths. Alloys that combine strength and lightness in ways the old masters could never have imagined. Advanced metallurgy that produces blades sharper and stronger than anything from the past. The methods change, the curator explains, her voice soft with wonder, but the underlying principles remain the same. Steel is still steel, and the human desire to create beautiful, functional things hasn't changed at all. We still shape metal with fire and force, still seek the perfect balance between strength and flexibility, still take pride in work well done. You pause before a display of Japanese swords, their curved blades speaking of a different tradition, but the same devotion to excellence. Beside them, Viking axes tell stories of northern seas and distant raids. African spears demonstrate the universal human impulse to create tools that serve both practical and artistic purposes. The museum becomes a celebration of human ingenuity that transcends borders and centuries. As evening approaches, the museum grows quieter still. The few remaining visitors speak in hushed tones, their voices carrying the respect that these ancient treasures deserve. The candlelight flickers gently, casting dancing shadows that seem to bring the displays to life. For a moment, you can almost see the ghosts of ancient craftsmen nodding their approval at how their work has been preserved and honored. The curator's final words echo softly in the peaceful air. These aren't just weapons and armor. They're proof of human creativity, determination, and the eternal desire to leave something beautiful behind. Every rivet, every curve, every carefully balanced blade represents someone who cared enough to do their best work, even when no one was watching. As you prepare to leave this sanctuary of steel and memory, you realize that the true legacy of medieval armor and weapons isn't found in the battles they fought or the conflicts they decided. It's found in the continuing human tradition of craftsmanship, the unbroken chain of knowledge passed from master to apprentice, the eternal desire to create things that are both beautiful and useful. The museum settles into its nighttime quietude, but the stories it holds continue to whisper in the darkness. These ancient artifacts will outlive all of us, carrying forward the memory of a time when steel was shaped by human hands and human hearts, when every blade was a work of art and every suit of armor a testament to hope. The candles flicker lower, and the shadows deepen around the displays. But there's no sadness in this dimming light, only the peaceful satisfaction of stories well told and legacies well preserved. The steel sleeps now, dreaming of the hands that shaped it and the purposes it served, secure in the knowledge that it will continue to inspire and educate for generations to come. As the candle flickers out, we drift toward rest, carrying with us the quiet strength of steel and the timeless beauty of human craftsmanship. Tonight, we've wandered through the forges, fields, and castles of medieval Europe, where armor and weapons told stories of skill and survival. We've walked beside blacksmiths as they shaped glowing steel, stood with knights as they donned their gleaming protection, and listened to the quiet wisdom of craftsmen who dedicated their lives to perfecting their art. From the gentle ring of chainmail to the whispered secrets of Damascus steel, from the bustling markets where merchants traded in tools of war to the humble villages where peasants transformed plowshares into instruments of resistance. Each moment has been a thread in the vast tapestry of human ingenuity and determination. These tools of steel shaped a world long gone, but their echoes linger in the quiet of history. They remind us that behind every great achievement stands someone who cared enough to do their best work, someone who understood that true craftsmanship is about more than just function. It's about leaving something beautiful behind. The armor sleeps now in museum cases, the swords rest on velvet cushions, and the forges have grown cold. But the spirit that created them lives on in every person who takes pride in their work, who seeks to build rather than destroy, who understands that the most lasting victories are won not with weapons but with skill, dedication, and the gentle persistence of human creativity. As your mind floats through these ancient times, let the weight of the day slip away like morning mist. You've traveled far tonight, through centuries of craftsmanship, across battlefields of memory, into the hearts of people who lived and worked and dreamed in a world very different from our own, yet connected to us by the timeless human desire to create something lasting and beautiful. The candles flicker low, the museum grows quiet, and the stories settle into peaceful silence. Rest now, friend. Let the echoes of hammer on anvil fade into the gentle rhythm of your breathing, and drift into dreams where steel catches starlight and craftsmen work with patient hands in the golden glow of forge fire. Sleep well,